Chapter 951. In the sky above the dusky Crow Mountain range, a powerful force was exploding wildly. The mountain rocks and trees were all destroyed, and the space was also shattered. The Purple King was fighting against 5 Wusheng in the manner of a king. Every move he made was filled with the power to swallow mountains and rivers. In terms of appearance, this guy was more flirtatious than Yixingchen. After all, no matter how much he transformed into a human, he still had the blood of the beast race. If he could get rid of his habit of showing off, he could definitely make a name for himself. Boom! Boom! The 5 Wusheng used all their skills and threw out all kinds of martial arts as if they were free. In the end, they couldn't do anything to the Purple King. It wasn't that they were bullying them. With the Purple King's current state, even if he stood in the air and let them take turns to attack him, he might not be able to do anything. What kind of monster is he? The elder of the Demon Emperor's Gate completely collapsed. Jun Changshao dared to come to the Demon Emperor's Gate for 2 reasons. First, he had the Unstoppable Blade as his trump card. Second, he relied on the Purple King. And that guy was definitely the strongest trump card of the sect of all times. All these years, Lu Wancher's fried rice didn't go to waste. The Purple King always thought that he was enduring humiliation and feigning civility. He never admitted that he was really good. However, as long as he was sent to fight, he wouldn't slack off. At that time, Jun Changshao had also deliberately tested him. The Purple King said solemnly, "My beast race is not like you humans. All you do is scheme and scheme. As long as I agree to work with you, I will definitely do my best." Although the beast race was cruel and ruthless, they didn't have many tricks up their sleeves. As long as they decided on something, they wouldn't turn back. Elder Nyo and the other spirit beasts were the same. They obeyed the Purple King's orders. Now that they were members of the sect of all times, they took beast pills every day and had stronger heaven and earth attributes. Naturally, they would do their best for Jun Changshao. Therefore, without absolute strength, Jun Changshao dared to challenge the Demon Emperor's Gate because of these spirit beasts. Boom! Boom! On the other side, the King of 100 Hills was still fighting with Wusheng. From the looks of it, he was gradually gaining the upper hand. Ding Xingwang had to be the fanciest of all. Facing the demonic cultivators who were equally unscrupulous, he had already used all kinds of sinister methods. The battle between the Purple Craggy Demon King and the King of 100 Hills was unrestrained. They used their thick demon chi to deal with their opponents. Old Ding and the Martial Saint did not fight head-on. They were looking for opportunities to sneak attack. One sword for 30,000 miles. Sword chi chills 19 continents. At this moment, Jun Changshao's cold voice came from the sky. A sword chi that seemed to sweep across heaven and earth tore through the sky, leaving a huge sword mark. Jiang Lingshan's expression changed. He hurriedly used the ghost movement technique and escaped from the area affected by the sword chi as fast as he could. Whoosh! The sword chi whizzed past and disappeared from the forest. Boom, boom, boom. The trees within 1,000 feet were cut in half. Then, they all fell to the ground. The originally dense area lost a piece of it as if it was shaved off. Whoosh! Jiang Lingshan, who dodged, was suspended in the air. His eyes were filled with fear. "Your weapon is the Jade Dragon," asks the Heaven Sword that the Demon Emperor once collected. Jun Changshao smiled. "There's more than one." "More than one?" Jiang Lingshan's eyes were filled with shock. Then, he looked at that guy's armor and said in disbelief, "Is this the 9 phosphor armor?" Swish! Jun Changshao came with his sword and slashed out another sword chi that tore through space. Jiang Lingshan hurriedly used his movement technique to dodge and shouted, "Kid, since you have the equipment that the Demon Emperor collected back then, you must have been to the Demon Valley." "Yes." Jun Changshao said, "I have been there." "Impossible, impossible." Jiang Lingshan denied himself. The Demon Emperor left the Demon Valley as a forbidden area for the righteous sects to go there like moths to a flame. How could you find these equipment so easily? Because I'm handsome. Jun Changshao rushed over again. When the Jade Dragon asks the Heaven's Sword cut through the void, the second move of the Ling Jian divine technique was performed. It instantly formed a powerful sword aura. Jiang Lingshan, who was shrouded, slowed down greatly. It was a little difficult to dodge, so he waved his hands. A light circle flew out of the void and collided with the sword Qi. Boom! There was an explosion, and light fragments were everywhere. The light circle that Jiang Lingshan threw out was a defensive treasure. Although the quality was good, it was instantly shattered in front of the Jade Dragon asks the Heaven's Sword. In terms of strength, it was okay. If he could crush him in terms of equipment. Old man. Jun Changshao attacked again and said, "Back then, you sent people to kidnap my sect's disciples in the West Fate State. This is the first debt. I will settle it with you." Swoosh! Swoosh! The linear sword technique was performed, and hundreds of sword lights poured down in an instant. Jiang Lingshan's equipment was not good, but he was still strong. He used the gloomy demonic energy and turned it into fist and palm prints, breaking all the incoming sword Qi. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance. A Demon Emperor's Gate disciple, Wu Sheng, was punched down by the Purple King. Blood spurted out of his mouth as he sank into the ground. Jiang Lingshan's expression turned ugly. He released his spiritual senses to look at the mountain gate and found that thousands of his disciples were being beaten up by more than 10 Sect of all times disciples. Damn it! How could a small fourth-rate sect be so strong? Yuan Gongzi had always emphasized not to provoke the Sect of all times, but he and the higher-ups did not agree. They thought that Guy was too cautious in his actions. However, when they saw the power of the Patriarch of the Sect of all times and the higher-ups of the Imperial City, they realized that they had been slapped in the face. The only thing that comforted Jiang Lingshan was that there were many half-saints in the sect. The Sect of all times was inferior in this aspect. Although they were a little embarrassed at first, they had adapted and were gradually gaining the upper hand. Boom! 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 At this moment, a dazzling explosion suddenly appeared, emitting a powerful force of thunder and lightning. It directly shook and collapsed a small part of the space. Swoosh! 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 For half-saints from the Demon Emperor's Gate happened to be in the explosion area. They immediately fell down like broken winged angels. Then, their faces hit the ground, and they were killed on the spot. Kakik! Zhen Dejuan walked out from the dark with a few formation flags in his hand. He laughed strangely and said, "Isn't that great? Isn't that great?" No wonder the core of the Sect of all times did not give him a chance to shine. It turned out that they had been hiding in the dark to secretly set up the Thunder Array. The power of the Thunder Array's explosion shocked several Wu Sheng from the Demon Emperor's Gate who were fighting. What kind of power was this? Why did the aura produced at the moment of the explosion make them feel small? TSK. Looking at the large area of space collapse in the explosion area, Jun Changshao said in surprise, "I didn't expect that placing the power of thunder punishment from the upper realm in the Thunder Array would cause such a terrifying lethality." Arya had been training the power of thunder punishment in the pagoda and finally tamed it into an obedient baby. The power of thunder punishment was different from Shi Jingshuan's special attribute. After purification, it could be integrated into the martial artist's body again, so Jun Changshao had been thinking about how to use it. Later, he thought that since it was a thunder attribute, it might be better to place it in the Thunder Array as the eye of the array. This idea was supported by Zhen Dejuan, and he began to research it with Shengguan Xinyao. They successfully created a brand new thunder explosion array with the power of thunder punishment as the eye of the array. Today was the first time it was used outside. Judging from the fact that several half-saints were killed in the explosion, its power was definitely beyond imagination. This was also because the power of thunder punishment had lost its original violent nature under Arya's training. Otherwise, with the power that bombarded Jun Changshao, even a little bit of it could be used as the eye of the array to kill Wuxing powerhouses. Chapter 952. The sudden explosion of the new lightning array shocked Wusheng of the Demon Emperor's Gate. As for the half-sages who were planning to launch a large-scale attack, they stood in mid-air in shock. Retreat! At this moment, Jiang Lingshan shouted angrily. The top forces of the sect of all times were too strong. Now that there was a lightning array that could appear and disappear mysteriously, he immediately gave in. Swoosh! 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 The martial artists of the Demon Emperor's Gate flew back to the sect without looking back. They didn't have any confidence in fighting these monsters that made their scalps explode. Since ancient times, demon cultivators had always been deeply feared by the world. Now, the disciples of the sect of all times were torturing them. Retreat? Jun Changshao said coldly, not a chance. Swoosh! He raised the jade dragon, asks the heaven's sword high, and shouted coldly, babies, summon your swords for me. Swoosh! Swoosh! Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others frantically communicated with their spatial rings. Then, they summoned all the ordinary swords and threw them at their feet. Jiang Lingshan was stunned. The disciples of the sect of all times suddenly took out so many swords. What was the meaning of this? Huff huff. At this moment, a powerful sword aura appeared around Jun Changshao and instantly spread to the surroundings. He shouted, come! Buzz! Buzz! The swords scattered on the ground began to tremble under the influence of the sword aura. Then, they flew up uncontrollably and gathered above Jun Changshao like 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. At that moment, Jiang Lingshan understood. So many swords, all of them props. He had to ask his disciples to prepare props to perform sword moves. This was too much. Jiang Lingshan didn't have time to complain in his heart because nearly 1,000 swords gathered together. Under the sword aura, they seemed to have turned into an extremely sharp mountain peak and stood erect in midair. Huff huff. A powerful sword will spread out, cutting the surrounding space apart. An unprecedented pressure filled the air, causing the Demon Emperor's Gate disciples who were fleeing back to the sect to be incomparably terrified. An intense uneasiness arose in their hearts, as if foreboding that they might die in the next second. Earth-rank warriors of the Eastern Haozhou set up an ambush in the forest. Jun Changshao said coldly, this is the second debt. Let's settle it now. Shwa! Jade Dragon asks the heaven's sword tilted downwards, and the giant sword that had gathered in the air suddenly descended slowly like a mountain peak. The area that it covered just happened to be the group of escaping devil cultivators, as well as the Demon Emperor's Gate. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! The violent sword momentum erupted as the giant sword pressed down, and the space was immediately torn into strips. Jun Changshao, who had executed the 10,000 swords, returned to origin and was suspended in mid-air, was augmented by the powerful sword aura. He was like an inviolable god. Jiang Lingshan's eyes were filled with terror. This kid's strength was clearly only at the level of a half-saint. Why was he able to execute a sword move that made him feel uneasy? Jun Patriarch. At this moment, Yuan Gongzi, who had yet to recover from his injuries, walked out from the inner courtyard with a pale face. He shouted in a panic, my Demon Emperor's Gate has offended you previously. I am willing to compensate you with natural spirit stones. Please have mercy on me. Hearing the words natural spirit stones, Jun Changshao's ears immediately perked up. Is this Yuan Gongzi's intention, or the Demon Emperor's Gate's intention? I am the Deputy Gate Master of the Demon Emperor's Gate. My words naturally represent the Demon Emperor's Gate. Yuan Gongzi hurriedly said. He was very worried that the other party would cut down the sword. Because just the terrifying sword might alone would not only cause heavy casualties to the sect, but the sect that had existed for thousands of years would also be reduced to nothingness. Coward! He had to, as soon as possible. He could not hesitate for even a moment. Yuan Gongzi had enough understanding of Jun Changshao. He also knew that the sect of all times had risen very quickly and definitely needed a large amount of martial arts resources. If he showed enough sincerity, he should be able to turn hostility into friendship. How much? Gosheng raised the jade dragon asks the heaven's sword. The huge sword that was originally slanted became perfectly straight once again. The demon emperor's gate disciples who were enveloped in the sword seemed to have been freed from hell. They were still in shock and took deep breaths. Yuan Gongzi thought for a moment and said, 1 million. 1 million natural spirit stones was already very good. However, Jun Changshao coldly said, your demon emperor's sect has been causing trouble for my sect of all times every few days. You only took out 1 million. Are you trying to dismiss a beggar? Yuan Gongzi said, 200, Jun Changshao impatiently interrupted, don't take out 2 million. Take out 10 million natural spirit stones as compensation and I will immediately put away my sword and leave the Dusk Crow mountain range. 10 million. Jiang Lingshan could not help but roar, do you think our demon emperor's gate is a mining company? Is that not the case? Jun Changshao said. As an expert on Wusheng's level, Jiang Lingshan almost lost control of his emotions and cursed on the spot. City Lord Han, old brother, I once understood your pain. Jun Patriarch. Yuan Gongzi's expression was ugly. 10 million natural spirit stones. My demon emperor's gate cannot take it out. Whoosh! The huge sword slanted down again. The demon emperor's gate disciples who had already escaped to the entrance were about to cry. The aura of death had once again emerged in their hearts, and it was even stronger than before. At this time, they finally understood. Their lives were completely in the hands of the other party. Whether they could survive or not depended on whether the vice sect master was willing to pay. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said indifferently, seeing that we are old friends, I will give you a chance to negotiate. You must cherish it. Yuan Gongzi's mouth twitched violently. After thinking for a while, he said with difficulty, I can only take out 5 million natural spirit stones. If Jun Patriarch thinks it is too little, my demon emperor's gate is willing to replace it with other martial arts resources. Yuan Gongzi. Jiang Lingshan shouted, if we give him all the natural spirit stones, what will our sect use to cultivate? It would have been better if he did not speak. The moment he spoke, Yuan Gongzi almost fainted from anger. You old fogies did not ask for my opinion and offended the sect of all times without permission. Now that they have come knocking on our door, you still have the face to speak here. Humph. An elder said decisively, at worst, we will fight to the death with him. Our demon emperor's gate has inherited the will of the demon emperor. Why would we be afraid of death? Inherited the will of the demon emperor? Jun Changshao sneered and said, girl, come out and take a look at this shameless group. Swoosh! Yao Menjing, dressed in a black robe, walked out from behind. Then, she raised her head slightly. Her eyes flashed with a strange luster, and she said in a cold voice, a group of traitors who fled when the demon emperor's gate was in danger. What qualifications do you have to inherit the will of the demon emperor? Whoosh! Whoosh! The hidden cultivation technique was no longer suppressed. Pure demonic energy spread out and shrouded the area that was already in a sorry state. Yao Menjing's eyes gradually turned from strange to crimson red. Strange marks appeared on the surface of her eyes. She seemed to have turned from acute lowly into a dark state. Plop! Plop! The demonic cultivators who had retreated to the front of the gate suddenly knelt down uncontrollably under the influence of the pure demonic energy. This is... Jiang Lingshan and the others saw Yao Menjing's eyes gradually turn red and special marks appear on her eyes. Their hands trembled violently as they said, Demon. Demon Emperor's eyes. Yuan Gongzi, who was standing in the outer courtyard, was dumbfounded at this moment. He knew that the sect of all times had disciples with innate demonic bodies, but he never thought that they would awaken the demon emperor's eyes. This meant that the little girl in front of him not only had the demon emperor's physique, but also had the qualifications to inherit the next patriarch of the demon emperor sect. Plop! Under the influence of the pure demonic energy, Yuan Gongzi could no longer control his body and knelt on the ground. Then, his expression changed from dull to ecstatic as he said, Lord Demon Emperor, has awakened. Lord Demon Emperor has awakened. P.S. I'm going out today and will be back tomorrow afternoon. This chapter was originally planned to be posted tomorrow, but forget it, I'll throw it out together. Tomorrow's update will be delayed to the afternoon or evening. Chapter 953. The war between the righteous and demonic paths ended with the fall of the Demon Emperor and the collapse of the Demon Emperor sect. However, the righteous sects did not expect that before the Demon Emperor's sect fell apart, there was an elder who realized that the situation had changed. He first took his disciples to leave and hid in the dark. This person was called Luo Kang, one of the 8 great elders of the Demon Emperor sect. Not only did Luo Kang lead his people to leave the Demon Emperor sect, but he also took away many martial arts secret manuals and demon sect documents. He also founded the Demon Emperor's Gate. This person had been hiding in the dark his entire life, working hard to develop and strengthen his sect, all so that one day, he could inherit the will of the Demon Emperor and contend with the righteous sects to the end. However, because the Demon Emperor's sect defected when it was on the brink of destruction, he was never accepted by the orthodox demon cultivators. He was even labeled as the scum of the demon Dao. Luo Kang didn't care what others thought of him and continued to lurk in the dark. Even when he clearly knew that many of his companions from the Devil Path sect were being encircled and annihilated by the famous righteous sects one by one, he didn't have any intention of helping them. It was this strategy of hiding in the dark and not being moved by others that allowed the Demon Emperor's Gate to live in the Starfall continent safely and gain the strength it had today. Unfortunately, Luo Kang was unable to pry into a higher realm of martial arts and was unable to escape the laws of heaven and earth, turning into a pile of withered bones. At the end of his lifespan, he once said to his disciples, "Lord Demon Monarch is not dead, he is just sleeping in the abyss." If one day, someone inherits the innate demon body and possesses the Demon Monarch's eye, it means that Lord Demon Monarch has awakened from the abyss. All of you must follow him and create a brand new era. These words became his last words, and also became the teachings of the Demon Emperor's Gate. The new disciples who joined the Demon Emperor's Gate not only had to engrave it in their hearts, they also had to treat the Demon Emperor as the Demon Emperor's Gate. In that case, what was the Demon Emperor's eye? According to the ancient records of the Demon Emperor's Gate, after the Demon Emperor was born, there would be a special mark in his eyes, which was regarded as the symbol of the demon sect's master. Today, thousands of years after Luo Canghai's death, the Demon Emperor's Gate had been paying attention to the innate demon body and the eye of the Demon Emperor. But in the end, there were no clues, and some of the higher-ups began to have doubts. It had been nearly 10,000 years since the fall of the Demon Emperor. Although there had been innate demon bodies, none of them had the eye of the Demon Emperor. Perhaps the previous sect master had deliberately left it behind so that everyone could firmly believe in the Demon Emperor. But when Yao Menjing appeared in front of the mountain gate, a pure innate demonic chi erupted from her body, and a special mark appeared in her eyes. The demonic cultivators of the Demon Monarch sect immediately realized that Sovereign Luo was right. The disciples of the Devil Monarch's Gate in the inner yard all knelt on the ground, their bodies in a kowtow position, their souls and blood trembling violently. Shua! Led by Jiang Lingshan, the 8 martial saints landed in front of the mountain gate. Although their cultivation bases were high enough to ignore Yao Menjing's innate demonic chi, their bodies were still trembling slightly, and their eyes were filled with awe and fear. And Jun Changshao was a little surprised. He didn't expect Yao Menjing to shock the higher-ups of the Demon Emperor's Gate. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have wasted so much effort to fight her. He could have just let her walk out. What a mistake, what a mistake. Elder Jiang. Yuan Gongzi whispered, "What are you waiting for? Kneel and greet the Lord." Humph, Jiang Lingshan sneered, "Although this girl has the mark in her eyes, it's still unknown whether or not she has the Demon Emperor's eye. Yuan Gongzi is kneeling just like that, isn't it a little too careless?" If it weren't for Jun Changshao and the sect of all time's disciples, he and the higher-ups might have believed Yao Menjing's words. But now, who knew if she was a fake? Yuan Gongzi said, "Such a pure innate demon chi, isn't it enough to prove that she has inherited Lord Demon Emperor's will?" This. Jiang Lingshan was silent. Whether or not the Demon Emperor's eye was real, he and the higher-ups couldn't be sure. Demon chi that was purer than his was impossible to fake. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said calmly, whether you kneel or not is your business. 5 million spiritual stones, not one less. The current situation was a little unexpected and he couldn't understand it. But since he was here to settle the score, he had to get the money first. Don't worry. Yuan Gongzi said seriously, the Demon Emperor's gate won't go back on our words. Then hurry up and take it out. I'm waiting to go home and take a bath. Jun Changshao said. Yuan Gongzi said with difficulty, wait a moment. Then, he looked at Jiang Lingshan and the others and said, everyone, don't just stand there. He was injured and couldn't move. Otherwise, he would have already gone to prepare the spiritual stones for Go Sheng. If we give him 5 million spiritual stones, what will the disciples use to cultivate? An elder of the Demon Emperor's gate complained. Yuan Gongzi was so angry that he was about to cry. The other party's mountain-like giant sword stood in front of the gate and could slash down at any time. There was also the will of the Demon Emperor. Did they not understand at all? Why did I have such a group of idiotic teammates? Patriarch. At this time, Yao Menjing said, let's not take the spiritual stones. Let's just take over the Demon Emperor's gate. Jun Changxiao's expression froze. This little girl's thoughts were very wild. My lord. Yuan Gongzi hurriedly said, I, Yuan Feng, am willing to follow you everywhere. Under normal circumstances, he might represent the Demon Emperor's gate. But now, his idiotic teammates were still doubtful, so he only represented himself. Yao Menjing crossed her arms and said, the one you have to be loyal to is not me, but my patriarch. The expression on Yuan Feng's face was a bit interesting. Jiang Lingshan said with a cold face, we are only loyal to the Demon Emperor. The others are not qualified. Whoosh! At this time, the giant sword that had been hanging in the air all this time suddenly fell down, and the sword force it carried directly tore through a large area of space. Jiang Lingshan and the others were shocked and hurriedly retreated. Boom! They had escaped, but the gate that had been established for thousands of years was instantly smashed to pieces by the giant sword, and a deep sword pit that extended to the main hall appeared. Looking from a high altitude, the old gate that had a lot of history looked like it had been ruthlessly slashed by a knife. It was very eye-catching. Whoosh! Whoosh! After the bombardment, the scattered swords on the ground were pulled back and quickly gathered together. Everyone. Jun Changshao said proudly, am I qualified? You! Jiang Lingshan and the other elders were furious. The gate represented the face of the sect, and it was directly destroyed by that guy. It was absolutely unforgivable. Of course. Jun Changshao said, you have to be qualified to be loyal to me. The 5 of you can't beat a hall master of my sect, so you are not qualified to be loyal to me. The corners of Ding Xingwang and the others' mouths twitched. My Lord Patriarch, for someone as strong as Hall Master Z, only the Emperor level can defeat him in a one-on-one battle. If you want to use that as the standard, no one is qualified to be with you. Hey! Yao Menjing hooked her finger at Yuan Feng and said, being loyal to the Patriarch is being loyal to me. Come over quickly. Yuan Feng was conflicted. He definitely had no objection to being loyal to this girl. After all, he had the connate demonic body and the Demon Emperor's eye. However, being loyal to Jun Changshao was a little difficult. Girl. Jun Changshao said, they obviously don't treat you as the real master. There's no need to talk nonsense with them. Hurry up and give me the money. Okay. Yao Menjing shook her head and said, I gave you a chance. Since you chose to give it up, you can't blame anyone. Hurry up. She put her hands on her hips and said fiercely with her big eyes, give me the money. Chapter 954. Jun Changshao was quite tempted when Yao Menjing said that she wanted to incorporate the Demon Emperor's gate. However, judging from Yuan Feng's hesitation and the attitude of Jiang Lingshan and the others, they didn't seem to have any intention of being loyal to him. Since that was the case, he couldn't force them. So, he continued with the plan and let them transfer the money to his card. Under the little lowly Yao Menjiang's fierce threat, Yuan Gongzi endured his injuries and personally went to withdraw the money. He couldn't count on useless teammates. He just hoped that they wouldn't cause any more trouble and quickly send this plague away. Not bad. In the sky above the damaged gate, Jun Changshao counted a few large spatial rings and said with satisfaction, 5 million each. Xiao! Xiao! The sword aura weakened and the sword fell down. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others kept the items, leaving them for the patriarch to use the next time he acted cool. Who? Yuan Gongzi let out a long sigh. But feeling the innate demonic aura released by Yao Menjiang, he still knelt on the ground with lingering fear. Jiang Lingshan and the others could only watch helplessly. Jun Changshao kept the spatial rings with spirit stones, not daring to argue with him. Their sect was found, and they couldn't beat them in terms of strength. They were completely passive. If they could spend some money to settle this matter, they should thank the heavens. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao said, ores, crystal cores, and herbs. Preparing, please wait a moment. Yuan Feng hurriedly said, fearing that this guy would gather the giant sword again. Oh right. Jun Changshao said, it's best if you have some demonic secret manuals. Not long after, the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate brought a lot of spatial rings. There were all kinds of martial arts stored in them, and there were dozens of demonic martial arts manuals. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao kept all the items and smiled, happy cooperation. Yuan Feng understood that these words were purposely said to let Jiang Lingshan's imagination run wild. Calling him a friend in front of all the heroes of the world at Reflection Mountain was also a debt. Based on Jun Changshao's personality, he would definitely return the favor. Are you really not loyal to my patriarch? Yao Menjiang asked. Yuan Gongzi's gaze was resolute as he said, devil cultivators are only loyal to the devil emperor, and never to anyone else. Stubborn. Yao Menjiang gave up. Actually, the reason why she asked the patriarch to take in the Demon Emperor's Gate was not because she had the Demon Emperor's inheritance, but because she could have a demonic cultivator as her companion. After all, in the sect of all times, only she and Imo Shang were demonic cultivators, and the latter could only be considered half a demonic cultivator. Everyone. Jun Changshao said indifferently, I'm not a calculative person. Since you've paid the compensation, the grudges between us will vanish like smoke. Yuan Gongzi and Jiang Lingshan's hearts were dripping blood. Although most of these natural spirit stones and various martial resources were plundered from the righteous sects, giving them all to him in exchange for settling their grudges was still a bit too high a price to pay. It was a bit hard to accept. Of course. Jun Changshao said again, I hope there won't be a next time, or else. He looked at the inner courtyard of the Demon Emperor's Gate, his eyes filled with killing intent. The Demon Emperor's Gate will really cease to exist. He was casually threatening the righteous sects that gave the righteous sects a headache. Jun Patriarch, please don't worry. My Demon Emperor's Gate only targets the righteous sects. We definitely won't provoke your esteemed sect. Yuan Feng said. Jun Changshao said, Yuan Gongzi, there are some things that only you and I know. If any news leaks out, I'll still pay you a visit. Yuan Feng knew that the matter he was talking about was definitely related to Yao Menjiang, so he hurriedly transmitted his voice, Jun Patriarch, our Lord is our faith. Naturally, we won't spread this matter and bring harm to her. That's good. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave first. After that, he left with his disciples. In fact, he didn't care about the fact that Yao Menjiang had the innate demonic body. It didn't matter even if it was spread out. After all, he already had the strength to contend with the top sects. However, he still had to develop the sect in a low-key manner. It was better to have less trouble. Watching Jun Changshao and his disciples gradually disappear into the forest, Jiang Lingshan and the other elders finally showed their anger. Yuan Gongzi. An elder said coldly, if the sect master knows about this, he'll definitely be disappointed in you. Fuck. You still have the face to say that. If you didn't act on your own initiative to target the sect of all times, would the sect have suffered such a disaster? Yuan Feng said firmly, the sect master will definitely understand me. Jiang Lingshan said with a sullen face, this old man is very suspicious now. Did you leak information to Jun Changshao so that he could easily find us? Bullshit. Yuan Gongzi finally couldn't hold back and roared, Yuan Feng will always be loyal to the Demon Emperor and the Demon Emperor's gate. I will never do anything to betray the sect. This obviously couldn't convince the upper echelons of the Demon Emperor's gate. They looked at him with a bit of caution. Everyone. An elder said, the sect's stronghold has been exposed. Our top priority is to think about how to hide it better. Otherwise, that guy will come every few days and rob us. Wouldn't that be a waste of money? Not to mention, Jun Goxing really had such a plan. He didn't make things difficult for the Demon Emperor's gate too much. It wasn't because of the martial arts resources, but because he wanted to let them continue to fight with the righteous sects while he reaped the benefits. He definitely couldn't let Jun Goxing rob the righteous sections. After all, it would be easy to become the public enemy of the continent. However, if the demon sect robbed them, he wouldn't have any psychological burden if he went to rob the demon sect. Sorry. It's the demon sect who robbed you. It has nothing to do with Jun. Jiang Lingshan said, Jun Changshao definitely has some special method to find this place. We need to move to a more dangerous and complicated forbidden area. If the forbidden area of the Starfall continent had human thoughts, they would definitely curse, fuck you, don't drag us down. Patriarch. On the way back to the sect of all times, Old Ding said, those martial cultivators of the demon sect seem to be very afraid of the Yao girl. Why don't they take this opportunity to take her for their own use? Jun Changshao shook his head and said, except for Yuan Gongzi and some disciples, several higher-ups of Wu Sheng's level don't approve. If they force it, I'm afraid it will be counterproductive. The Purple King said lightly, if they don't accept it, then destroy them. Jun Changshao said, if the Demon Emperor's gate could be destroyed so easily, it wouldn't have existed for thousands of years. Although in the battle just now, their top forces were stronger than the other side, who knew if the demon sect had any backup plans? Not to mention, there was still a sect master who hadn't shown up. Who knew how high his cultivation was? Since there were uncertain factors, making the Demon Emperor's gate willingly pay a loss was definitely the best result. Otherwise, if they were forced into a corner and destroyed jade and common stone, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, since I found them once, I will find them again and again. As long as they are still in the Starfall continent, even if they hide to the ends of the earth, they won't be able to escape from my hands. He wasn't bragging. He really had the ability. Because even if he didn't learn about the Dusky Raven Mountain range from Ghost and the others, Jiang Ye could inquire about it. When his cultivation was stronger and his understanding of the primordial spirit deepened, not to mention finding a sect in the Starfall continent, even finding a needle would be as easy as flipping his hand. Now, Jun Changshao said to himself, just wait and watch the show. He looked back at Yao Menjing, whose eyes had returned to normal, and said to himself, girl, I didn't forcibly take in the demon cultivators of the Demon Emperor's gate. I plan to leave them to you. When you have enough strength in the future, go and subdue them openly and become the sect master of the demon sect. Sect of all times. After Jun Changshao returned, he placed all 5 million natural spirit stones in the item machine and set the contribution points for the disciples to buy them. As for the matter of visiting the Demon Emperor's gate in the Dusky Raven Mountain range, no one in the outside world talked about it. The various sects were still actively searching for the hiding place of the demon sect. Elder Jiang. After returning, Li Qingyang found Jiang Ye and said, is there any news of her? Found her, Jiang Ye said. Li Qingyang was overjoyed. But, Jiangya said, this girl lives alone in a remote village. It's very difficult. Where does she live? Little Han Village in Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Li Qingyang was silent. He was in Yangzhou in the southwest, and she was in Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Was she deliberately hiding as far away as possible so that he wouldn't find her? Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked in from outside the hall and said, this disciple wants to go out for a few days. You've decided? Jun Changshao said, are you going to look for her? This disciple just wants to take a look at her from afar, Li Qingyang said. Let elder son accompany you. After all, he's from Lu Prefecture in the northeast and is familiar with the area there, Jun Changshao said. It wasn't hard to see that this guy had definitely eavesdropped on the conversation between Li Qingyang and Jiangya. Yes. On the same day, Li Qingyang and Gongsun Haohai left the Sect of All Times and headed toward Lu Prefecture in the northeast. Gongsun Haohai was a bit excited. After all, he had been trapped in the Sect of All Times to sweep the floor, and now he had become an elder. He hadn't returned to his hometown for many years. Jun Changshao didn't stay idle either. After distributing all the resources he had obtained from the Demon Emperor's Gate, he entered the planar battlefield and took out his treasure detector, continuing to search for opportunities to expand the stronghold's area. As for the Sect of All Times disciples, they were actively doing sect missions. Their sect's achievement value continued to increase, and they were getting closer and closer to reaching the maximum. Chapter 955. All the warriors on the battlefield were crying because Jun Gosheng had returned after settling his family's matters. This time, in order to expand the area of his stronghold, he started to search for fortuitous opportunities. Weapons, martial techniques, equipment, treasures, herbs, ores, as long as they appeared on the treasure detector and were locked on by him, they would not be able to escape. The result of this kind of crazy search was that many planes had painstakingly confirmed the opportunities and went through untold hardships to find them, but in the end, all that was left was an empty box that had been licked. It's gone. Someone beat us to it. Who is it? Every once in a while, one would hear the heart-wrenching cries of warriors at certain places of fortuitous opportunities. Their cries were filled with anger and sorrow. Many warriors who entered the plains were here for fortuitous opportunities. Some had been searching for years, but in the end, someone else beat them to it. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow. Although this sacred sky heart grass is not mature yet, it can be hastened by the incubator. This meteorite spirit stone weighs 500 kilograms. If there is a professional blacksmith, it can be used to forge many good weapons and equipment. As for the spirit energy bull martial technique, I can let Sinner, Yuhua, and the others cultivate it. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in the main hall, was carefully sifting through and distributing the various fortuitous opportunities he had found recently. He was even dissatisfied with some of them, thinking that they had no practical use. Warriors from the plains would be wild with joy when they found a fortuitous opportunity. This guy was starting to dislike it. It was infuriating to compare himself to a real person. After finding so many fortuitous opportunities, the falling star continent's stronghold had expanded by a lot. It was now expanding from the size of a village to a town. According to the rules of the battlefield, if a newly entered plane could expand the stronghold to the size of a town within 5 years, it was equivalent to completing the mission and gaining the right to enter and exit freely. However, before the warriors representing the falling star continent could enter and were still in fear, their own stronghold's mission was almost completed. This was probably unprecedented. Swish! The terrain remodeling device flew out and landed on the ground. Buzz! 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 From night to dawn, the falling star continent's stronghold shook frequently. A huge mountain rose from the ground just like that. Boom! The next day, Xiao Ziji held a huge mountain in his hands. Jun Changshao quickly set up the 5 elements great formation below, supporting it in midair. At this moment, there were already 5 tall mountains floating in the falling star continent's stronghold. Oh my god! Another mountain has risen. How did the falling star continent do it? Several hundred miles away, cultivators occasionally passed by and saw another mountain floating in the air at the end of their vision, intersecting with other mountains, creating a spectacular scene of mountains floating in the air. All of them widened their eyes. When I passed by yesterday, there were clearly only 4 mountains. How did another one appear out of thin air in just one night? If he hadn't been steadfast in his cultivation of martial arts, he might have even thought that he had seen a ghost. Don't be surprised, don't be surprised. Because, this was only the beginning. In order to surpass the strongholds of those top-notch existential planes, Jun Changshao was still working hard to search for opportunities and expand his territory. Therefore, in the following period of time, numerous mountains appeared out of nowhere and then hung in midair. Falling Star Continent. In order to make up for the losses caused by Go Sheng's blackmail, after the Demon Emperor's Gate moved to another forbidden area, it began to madly target the righteous sections. In a short period of time, 6 or 7 fourth-rate sects were destroyed. The top-notch sects expressed their helplessness because although they had joined forces with many other sects, they still couldn't find the hiding place of the Demon Emperor's Gate. They could only passively take a beating. Because of the frequent disturbances of the Demon Sect, the entire Falling Star Continent was shrouded in an oppressive atmosphere. Many self-proclaimed righteous sects were in fear and trepidation, fearing that one day they would be suddenly wiped out. This atmosphere infected the Northeast Lu Prefecture, which stood aloof from worldly affairs, and the atmosphere was similarly oppressive. The places where the disciples of the sects often traveled or played were now rarely visited. It was as if snowflakes were fluttering and the north wind was whistling, and the world was boundless. The oppressive atmosphere could only be felt by cultivators. The ordinary people on the icy plains were still working from sunrise to sunset, living the most ordinary and difficult life. In a small, remote village, the adults who went out hunting returned with a full load, and the children happily welcomed them. Wow, what a big fish! It must be my father who caught it. Nonsense, it must be my father who caught it. The children were fighting over the fish until their faces turned red, causing the adults who had unloaded the game and were drinking to keep warm to laugh. Come, come. A burly middle-aged man in his early 40s waved his hand and said, Uncle Guo will tell you a story today. He was the captain of the village's hunting team and the only one in the village who cultivated the martial Dao. Although his strength was only at stage 12 meridian opening, he was the god of war in the hearts of the children. Uncle Guo. A 10-year-old child said, we want to hear the story of the sect of all times. I knew you brats wanted to hear this. Uncle Guo especially went to the city to ask around, Uncle Guo said with a smile. The children immediately gathered around him, wild with joy. Sister Chiao, The 10-year-old child shouted towards a simple house, Uncle Guo is going to tell the story of the sect of all times. Come and listen. Creak. The slightly dilapidated door was pushed open. A woman wearing an apron, who seemed to be busy with lunch, walked out. She was about 20 years old. Although she was dressed plainly, it could not hide her delicate and pretty appearance. Little Huzi. The woman said, Uncle Guo just came back from hunting and still needs to rest. You guys quickly go somewhere else to play and stop pestering him. It's fine, it's fine. Uncle Guo said with a smile. The woman shook her head. Girl. Uncle Guo said with a smile, I went to the city this time and asked around a lot about the sect of all times. Among them, there's even someone you dream of. Uncle Guo. Who is the person that Sister Chiao dreams of? The children asked curiously. The woman's face turned red. Uncle Guo drank a mouthful of strong liquor and said with a grin, this time, Uncle Guo will tell you the story of the sect of all times participating in the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy. The children did not know what the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy was, but as long as it was related to the sect of all times, they would be very happy to listen. The story is like this. Uncle Guo told them the news he heard from outside without missing a single word. The children were mesmerized by the story. The woman was also listening. Especially when she heard that person's name, she was overjoyed and thought to herself, he's already so strong. After feeling happy, she felt even more disappointed. He was the #1 genius of Azure Sun County and had joined the glorious sect of all times. His future was limitless. On the other hand, she was just an ordinary person and was destined not to have any interactions with him in the future. Why is Sister Chow crying? No, no, the woman hurriedly stood up and rushed back to her room. She said, Uncle Guo must be starving. I'll go and cook now. Chapter 956. Night fell. Sister Chow sat under the roof in a daze. Girl. Uncle Guo walked over and asked, what are you thinking about? Nothing, nothing. You've been in Little Cold Village for a few years now. I can tell that you have something on your mind. Girl, do you know the second disciple of the sect of all times? Every time you go out, you ask me to find out about him, Uncle Guo said seriously. Sister Chow lowered her head and said, I used to know him. Uncle Guo was not surprised by this answer. He said, he's an existence that ordinary people like us can't reach. Quickly forget him and don't make things difficult for yourself. Sister Chow said dejectedly, I came to Lu province from southwest Yangzhou to northeast Yangzhou to forget him. But even though the weather here is cold, it's hard to let go of my thoughts. Gulp. Uncle Guo drank a mouthful of strong wine and said sadly, I can understand because I also had a girl I liked when I was young. Her talent was better than mine and her realm was higher than mine. I could only look at her from afar like a fool. Sister Chow was stunned. Uncle Guo said, after a long time, you've forgotten. After a long time, you've forgotten. Sister Chow murmured and said, Uncle Guo, I understand. Uncle Guo got up and left. Sister Chow sat under the roof and thought for a long time. Then, she took out a yellowed paper crane and said, Brother Qingyang, I hope you become an indomitable expert. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew. The paper crane flew out of her hand and into the sky. Sister Chow looked up and watched it gradually disappear into the night. She said with heartache, from today onwards, I'll cut off all thoughts. Outside the village. The paper crane floated down. Li Qingyang caught it with his palm and said dejectedly, did she want to tear it up? Yes. Gong Sun Haohai said. Li Qingyang kept the paper crane in his spatial ring and turned around. Let's go. Go? Gong Sun Haohai was stunned. He could tell that Li Qingyang had been secretly paying attention to the girl called Sister Chow. The two of them definitely had an unusual relationship. Now that he had finally rushed over from Yangzhou in the southwest, was he in a hurry to leave without going out to meet him? Are you really leaving? Yes. All right. Swoosh. Whoosh. The two of them disappeared outside the village. Sister Chow, who had already returned to her room, seemed to have sensed something. She subconsciously looked at the spot outside the village where Li Qingyang had been standing and muttered, something left. Was it a stray cat? Taw! Step! Taw! Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves rang out in the night, breaking the tranquility of the little cold village and waking up Uncle Guo and the others who were sound asleep. Not good. The bandits are here. Chaotic noises resounded in the air. Suddenly, a group of ferocious-looking men in black riding on tall horses rushed out of the village. They were the bandits that roamed Luzhou in the northeast all year round. Because the famous righteous sects had been hiding in their sects and didn't dare to come out easily, they began to commit crimes unscrupulously. Uncle Guo rushed out of the house with a long spear. As the only martial cultivator in the little Han village, he was also the security captain responsible for the safety of the entire village. Fuck you. The bandit leader got off his horse and sent Uncle Guo flying with a kick. Then, he ordered his subordinates to search for valuables and food. Uncle Guo. When Sister Chow saw Uncle Guo vomiting blood and lying on the ground, she hurriedly ran out of her room. The bandit leader said in surprise, there's actually a pretty girl in this remote village? Men, capture her and bring her back to the mountain to be my wife." "Yes." A few ferocious bandits rushed over with swords and sabers. "Girl." Uncle Gua struggled to stand up and pushed Sister Chiao to the back. With a ferocious expression, he said, "Run. You can't run." One of the bandits chased after him. Whoosh! Uncle Gua poured a thin amount of spirit energy into his long spear and swung it. However, the other party easily dodged it and stabbed him with his sword. Slash! The cold sword pierced through his chest, and blood splattered on the snowy ground. Uncle Gua. Sister Chiao, who had steadied herself, saw that Uncle Gua had been pierced by a sharp sword. Her beautiful face turned pale as she cried out involuntarily. Coincidentally, the villagers were also chased out. When they saw that the only martial cultivator in the village was heavily injured, despair rose in their hearts. What a hindrance! The bandit drew his sword and kicked Uncle Gua away. Then, he walked toward Sister Chiao. Bang! A stone flew past and hit his head. The 10-year-old child picked up a small stone and held it in his hand. He glared at the bandit and said, "Don't hurt Sister Chiao." The bandit turned around and walked over with his blood-stained sword. He grabbed the child and raised him up high. With a murderous aura, he said, "Little brat, you're courting death." Although the child was restrained, he was not afraid in the face of danger and shouted, "Sister Chiao, run. Run." The bandit leader snorted coldly and said, "It's useless for a woman that I like to run to the ends of the earth." At this moment, the other bandits had already approached Sister Chiao. Don't come over." Sister Chiao panicked and retreated step by step until she reached the corner of the wall. There was no way out. "Boss." The second bandit leader led his men out of the villager's room and cursed, "This village is so fucking poor. There isn't even anything valuable, let alone banknotes. Same old rules." The bandit leader ordered, "Burn it all." "What about these people? Take the woman and child away. Kill the rest." "All right." The second bandit leader waved his hands hurriedly. The bandits threw out the torches in their hands and walked toward the trembling villagers with their swords. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind blew. The torches that were about to touch the houses were extinguished. The bandits who were about to attack looked in the direction of the wind and suddenly saw a sword flash before their eyes. Pft! Pft! Blood splattered and heads flew everywhere. When the bandit leader and the second bandit leader saw this, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The bandits who were about to capture Sister Chiao froze on the spot. An invisible pressure made them unable to move. They could not move, but their minds could. A strong aura of death instantly filled their hearts. Although these bandits were weak in cultivation, their intuition was very accurate. A sharp sword suddenly appeared and slashed across their necks, mercilessly reaping their lives. This scene happened very quickly. When the trembling villagers gradually calmed down, they realized that more than 10 bandits around them were beheaded. Blood dyed the snow red. The scene was very frightening. The children were so frightened that they did not dare to look. Sister Chiao, who was still in shock, tried her best to raise her head. She saw a man in a red cloak standing in front of her. The sword in his hand was stained with blood, dripping from the tip of the sword to the ground. Although his back was facing her and she could not see his face clearly, she felt very familiar. She could not help but call out, "Brother Qingyang." The person who suddenly appeared did not say anything. He walked step by step toward the bandit leader who was restrained by the pressure. Then, he placed his sword on the bandit leader's neck and said coldly, "You can forgive a natural disaster, but you can't survive a self-inflicted disaster." This voice, it's him. It's really him. Sister Chiao, covered her mouth as tears fell like rain. "Hero, don't, pft." The sword flashed, and the bandit leader's head flew off. Then, it fell to the snow. His face was forever frozen in fear. The second bandit leader who was restrained saw his boss die just like that. The fear in his eyes intensified. Then, after the sword slashed across his body, his head separated from his body and he went to collect his lunchbox. All the bandits were killed. The crisis of the little cold village was resolved. The man in the battle robe cleaned the bloodstains on his sword and elegantly sheathed it. He was about to leave, but Sister Qiao struggled to stand up and said, "Brother Qingyang, is that you?" Chapter 957. It was daybreak. The frightened villagers were cleaning up the corpses of the bandits and cleaning up the red snow. What happened last night was unforgettable, especially when the man in the battle robe suddenly appeared and killed so many bandits. The child called Little Huzi stood at the window and tried his best to look inside, but his mother pulled him away by the ear. Uncle Gua, who was originally injured, was squatting at the door and drinking strong wine. It was strange. Yesterday, he thought that he was going to die, but after taking a pill, his body quickly recovered and he was completely fine now. In the room, Sister Qiao stood there, not knowing what to do. In front of her, the man in the battle robe had already taken off his mask. It was Li Qingyang. He had returned after leaving Little Cold Village. To be exact, he could not let go of his beloved Brother Qingyang. Sister Qiao said, "Why are you in Lu province in the northeast?" Li Qingyang turned around and looked at her. "I should be the one asking you that." Sister Qiao did not dare to look at him. She lowered her head and stammered, I came to seek refuge with a distant relative." The lie was too lame. Li Qingyang walked forward and put his hands on her shoulders. He said in a serious tone, "Come back to Yangzhou in the southwest with me. Come back to the Sect of all times with me." After the bandit attack, he realized that it was too dangerous for a weak girl to live outside. The patriarch would definitely not refuse to bring her back to the Sect. Sister Qiao kept her head down. "I don't want to be a burden to you." She was the same as Pei Ania's fiancé. They were both ordinary people with no talent and aptitude. If they had not met by chance at the Lotus Pond Lake, they would never have crossed paths. In fact, Sister Qiao did not know Li Qingyang's identity at first. After she found out that he was a direct descendant of the Li family in Qingyang City and a martial arts genius, she felt inferior. She decided to leave him because on the eve of the 100 Sect Alliance's recruitment, Patriarch Li came looking for her and placed 10,000 taels of silver in front of her. He said, "Take this money and leave Yangzhou in the southwest. Don't bother my son again." Sister Qiao did not accept the money that was enough for her to live comfortably. She simply packed her luggage and left a letter. In order to hide further and never meet again, she came to Lu Prefecture in the northeast, which was the furthest from Yangzhou in the southwest. For a girl without any martial arts to travel such a long distance to the other side of the continent, there was no need to mention the difficulties and dangers involved. If the Sect of all times did not become famous later on, and if Li Qingyang's name did not appear in her ears again, Sister Qiao would not have asked Uncle Gua to deliberately inquire about it. She did not want to pester Li Qingyang. She had done it. However, it was impossible for her to forget him forever. Sister Qiao did not wish to accompany the person she loved forever. She only wished to hide in a corner and silently watch over him. Uncle Gua saw this clearly, which was why he advised her to learn to forget last night and face the future with a better attitude. Sister Qiao also realized that she was paying more and more attention to Li Qingyang, so she had the thought of tearing up the paper crane that she had kept until now. The paper crane was given to him by Li Qingyang. Although it was very cliché, it was similar to a token of love. Sister Qiao had chosen to tear it apart, which meant that she had to sever everything and learn to forget him. This kind of relationship problem between a man and a woman was really complicated and troublesome. Therefore, Jun Patriarch was smarter and always focused his energy on the Sect. Otherwise, if he wrote a few chapters because of emotional matters, the readers would say that it was useless. "I'm already Wu Huang now, how are you going to drag me down?" Li Qingyang said. These words were said very casually, but when Uncle Guo heard it, he spat out a mouthful of wine on the spot and said in shock, "Wu Huang. My God!" After following Jun Gosheng for a long time, Chief Steward Li had also changed. He had become a silent, pretentious person. You're Wu Huang now. Sister Qiao said with her eyes wide open. Although she had never practiced martial arts, she had more or less heard of the continent's cultivation system. Not to mention Wu Huang's level, even a martial master was an existence that she could only look up to. I know. Father went to look for you before, but he won't object to us being together now, so. Li Qingyang hugged Sister Qiao and said, "Come back to the sect of all times with me. If you feel that you're not worthy of me, I'll ask Patriarch to let you have the qualifications and cultivation that are worthy of me." This was not a problem at all. As long as Jun Changshao was willing, he could turn an ordinary person into a genius in minutes. As the first disciple to enter the Lingyan Pavilion, if Li Qingyang really came to ask, Go Sheng would definitely not refuse. "Brother Qingyang." Sister Qiao looked up and said, "You said that you want to become an indomitable expert. Although Wu Huang is very powerful, he's not the best. He still needs to work harder." Li Qingyang's expression changed slightly. He understood the meaning of this girl's words. Creak. The door opened, and Li Qingyang walked out. He left the little cold village without looking back. Sister Qiao sat in the room, holding the paper crane that had already flown away. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Uncle Guo walked in and squatted at the door. "He cares about you a lot. Why did you refuse? If he followed me to the sect of all times, would Brother Qingyang still have the heart to cultivate?" Sister Qiao choked with sobs. Sigh. Uncle Guo shook his head and said, "Girl, you're thinking too much for others. In the end, you'll only hurt yourself." "Uncle Guo, who's that big brother?" "What big brother?" "He's clearly an immortal who can go to heaven and earth." Yes, an immortal," the group of brats said with admiration. Although the bandits' attack had traumatized them a little. However, Li Qingyang's appearance and his powerful killing of the bad guys had shocked them even more. It was the first time they knew that there was such a powerful martial artist in the world. "Little guys." Uncle Guo took a sip of wine and said, "His name is Li Qingyang. He's the second disciple of the sect of all times." "Ah. He's Li Qingyang. Oh my God, no wonder he's so powerful." "Uncle Guo, how does a disciple of the sect of all times know Sister Qiao?" Uncle Guo thought for a moment and said in a meaningful tone, "They're friends, very good friends." Extreme Cold Palace. The palace master and disciples stood in front of the mountain gate excitedly. Li Qingyang leaned against a tree outside, ignoring everyone's welcome. He was still thinking about something. He thought to himself, "If you're afraid of delaying my cultivation, I'll come and find you when I don't need to cultivate." How could he not cultivate? Break through Wusheng and become a martial emperor. "Grand Elder." The Extreme Cold Palace Master said, "You're finally back." Gongsun Haohai was also a little moved. However, he suppressed his slightly agitated state of mind and said, "I'm just here to take a look. I have to return to the sect of all times as soon as possible." "Grand Elder." The Extreme Cold Palace Master looked at Li Qingyang, who seemed to have a lot on his mind, and said in a low voice, "Young friend, you seem to have something on your mind?" "I'm troubled by love." Gongsun Haohai shook his head. He did not stay in the Extreme Cold Palace for too long. Then, he left with Li Qingyang and set off for the sect of all times. However, before he left, he instructed the palace master to do something. The little cold village returned to its usual peace. The villagers worked at sunrise and rested at sunset as usual. However, a few days later, an elder and dozens of disciples of the Extreme Cold Palace suddenly rushed over and announced that they would be guarding the village all year round. The little cold village was located in a remote area, and its territory belonged to a seventh-rate sect. Therefore, when a fourth-rate sect sent people over, it immediately alarmed the entire sect. A sect master personally led the higher-ups and rushed over. Sect Master Sunday, the elder of the Extreme Cold Palace, said coldly, "You can't even deal with the bandits. My Extreme Cold Palace will take over this place." "Yes, yes." Sect Master Sun hurriedly nodded and bowed. A fourth-rate sect actually sent experts to protect a small village. Could it be that there was an important person that he could not afford to offend living in seclusion here? Chapter 958. Patriarch. In the main hall of the Iron Bone Peak, Li Qingyang walked in and cupped his hands. "I'm back," Jun Changshao said. "It just so happens that the battlefield stronghold has expanded quite a bit during this period of time. We're waiting for you to build it." "Yes." Li Qingyang left. Hall Master Li Jun Changshao sent a voice transmission. "Inform the Northeast Lu State Branch to send someone to hide in Little Cold Village and secretly protect that girl. If anything happens, let the branch master bring his own head to the sect to apologize." He already knew about the matter between Li Qingyang and Sister Qiao, so he had to put an end to all dangers. There must not be a heart-wrenching scene where the lovers would never be together. "Okay." Li Luoqiu hurriedly communicated with the Northeast Lu State Intelligence Network. Not long after, the small village that was originally protected by the Extreme Coldness Palace was protected by many experts who were proficient in the way of assassins. At this time, not to mention bandits, even if the fourth or fifth-rate sects sent people to cause trouble, they would definitely not return. The martial artists of the Falling Star continent would never think that a small village with only 100 people would have so many experts hidden in the dark. Its defense was not inferior to a third-rate sect at all. This was still bandits causing trouble. If the situation was more dangerous, Jun Changshao might have sent a legion of the war cavalry haul over. For the sake of his disciple. Go Sheng liked to make a big fuss over nothing. The next day, Li Qingyang brought his fellow disciples into the Falling Star continent and began to plan and build. The person he loved did not follow him back to the sect of all times, which made him very depressed. Only by using his energy to busy himself would he temporarily forget about the unhappy things. A new round of construction began. The disciples of the sect of all times worked in full swing. As the area was already large enough, Li Qingyang could finally fully display his construction talent. As for Jun Changshao, he did not idle around. When the disciples were building the stronghold, he still relied on the treasure detector to search for opportunities. The territory would expand every once in a while. This expansion speed could not be compared to dozens of planes added together. Central State, Altar. After Jun Changshao stole another opportunity and returned to the stronghold, the time shown on the Earth Spirit instrument was suddenly shortened to 2 years. What? The high priest jumped to his feet and exclaimed, "Why is the time to enter the planar battlefield sped up?" Ever since the Upper Realm issued the order for the Starfall continent to enter the interplanar battlefield, there was a countdown on the earthly spirit instrument. There were originally 3 years left, but now, there was suddenly a year left. Of course, it was unbelievable. What's going on? Don't tell me you want us to send ourselves to our deaths a year in advance. Despair appeared in the eyes of the elders. The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had disturbed the peace of all the major sections. Now that they had been in the planar battlefield for almost a year, it was definitely a case of when it rains, it pours. AI. The high priest shook his head and said, "Inform all the major sects about this." Yes. On the same day, the news that they would be entering the planar battlefield a year in advance spread among the major sects of the Starfall continent. Damn it! A patriarch of a major sect said angrily, "Time is running out again. Patriarch, we have to find the Demon Emperor's Gate as soon as possible. Otherwise, once we enter the planar battlefield, they will take the opportunity to stir up trouble, and the entire continent will suffer a great disaster." That's right. That patriarch said, "We have to get rid of this great threat within 2 years." Because the time to enter the planar battlefield had been brought forward, all the major sects realized the severity of the problem. Thus, all sorts of meetings were held, and countless plans were made to deal with the Demon Emperor's gate. However, because they couldn't find a place to hide, they couldn't find a solution. June Patriarch. In the dining hall, the visiting Mu Changhong said with a bitter face, "The time to enter the planar battlefield has been sped up. There are only 2 years left." Sped up? Jun Changshao was stunned and thought to himself, could it be that it's like the bound soul bombs, it has its own temper? Speaking of the soul bombs, Go Sheng wanted to cry. All these years, he had always worked hard for the sake of the sect, and he had never let his guard down. However, that thing would sometimes shorten the time for no reason. Later, Jun Changshao gradually found a pattern. If he didn't wake up at the designated time, it would be deducted. If he took a dump for too long, it would also be deducted. The most unacceptable thing was, if he took a bath for too long, it would also be deducted. Only 5 years had passed since the 100-year countdown. There should still be 95 years left. In fact, it was already 93 years. The 2 years that were shortened were naturally deducted. I clearly didn't waste my time waiting to die, nor did I treat it negatively. Why should the time be shortened? Ding! Self-detonation time remaining, 93 years, 150 days, 14 hours, 23 minutes, 32 seconds. While Jun Changshao was complaining in his heart, the countdown on the soul bombs sped up by another hour. The system said, the soul bombs have emotions. The host should treat them gently. Although Jun Changshao was full of anger and grievance, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. Although the soul bombs were unreasonable, because the time would be deducted at any time and place, Jun Patriarch had developed a good habit of not sleeping in and taking a dump to end the battle quickly. If you gave him a phone now, he would definitely not take advantage of the time to read the news, read beep beep beep, and even more not check his WeChat moments and Weibo. It's only 2 years. Jun Changshao said, City Lord Mu, don't worry too much. With the current development of the stronghold and his reputation on the playing battlefield, even if the martial artists of the Falling Star continent went in now, they wouldn't be in any danger. Sigh. Mu Changhong said enviously, if I had Jun Patriarch's mentality, I wouldn't be sleeping all day. City Lord Mu, the food is cold. Munch munch. City Lord Mu took big bites of the food. At this moment, only delicious food could comfort his despair. Oh, right. Jun Changshao said, Honglian is about to break through to Wu Huang. With the help of various resources, many non-core inner sect disciples had reached the peak of the martial king level during this time. Mu Changhong heard this and became even more depressed. His daughter breaking through to Wu Huang was something worth celebrating, but after that, she had to enter the playing battlefield. Sigh. Mu Changhong shook his head and said, what will come will come. We can't avoid it. We can only resign ourselves to fate. Jun Patriarch. Can I have another bowl of fried rice? The inner sect disciples of the sect of all times, Lu Qianxian, Li Qingyang, and the others were the absolute core. Li Tiantian, Sima Zhongda, Mu Honglian, Huo Ling, Chu Xiaonan, and the other Heavenly Mandate Academy students who joined later were in the second echelon. Because of their spiritual roots and the late entry, there was a gap between them and the first batch of core disciples. However, today, they had all reached the peak of the martial king level. One day, Jun Changshao gathered these people and gave them the True Yang set and the Surge Talisman. He took them into the plain battlefield. On the battlefield, Li Tiantian broke through to Wu Huang with the help of the talisman. He flew around the stronghold and laughed excitedly, I'm in the sky, I'm finally in the sky. Ha ha ha. Hall Leader Z. Jun Changshao said, I'll leave these new recruits to you. Take them out to gain experience. The Purple King said calmly, follow me. Whoosh! Whoosh! Li Tiantian, Mu Honglian, and the others flew out of the stronghold. It was not until they were far away that they saw cultivators who were comparable to Wu Huang or even half-saints. They were shocked and said, there are so many masters here. Look, it's the warriors of the Falling Star continent. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The Sect of All Time's disciples wore bright uniforms, so when they were discovered by the warriors, they immediately fled as if they had seen a ghost. Li Tian said in surprise, Hall Leader Z, they seem to be afraid of us. Mu Honglian, Huo Ling, and the others were also very puzzled. They had heard from their senior brothers that there were many masters in the plain battlefield, and they were very unfriendly. They had to be careful when they entered. However, they were scared away when they saw them. The situation was completely different from what they had said. Chapter 959. Li Tian, Mu Honglian, and the others were very depressed. They had entered the dimensional battlefield with high hopes, hoping to fight against higher-level powerhouses. However, after wandering around outside for half a day, the martial artists they met all ran away like frightened rabbits. In the past, the martial artists were unfriendly to the Falling Star continent and wanted to take merit points from them. Now, it was the Falling Star continent that was unfriendly to them. The situation had completely reversed. There was no other way. Li Tian and the others could only change their clothes and disguise themselves. Only then could they find a yellow-level powerhouse and fight with them. They benefited a lot from it and then returned to their sects to digest it. This won't do. Jun Changshao was a little depressed. The dimensional battlefield was for disciples to fight and become stronger. However, not only did they not want to play with him, but they also deliberately avoided him. It was completely meaningless. The system said, it's your fault for killing tens of thousands of people. If it were me, I wouldn't play with you either. Fuck. Jun Changshao said, if I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to snatch the opportunity. I would have let them all target me. Dear participant, when the Falling Star continent reaches a certain number of people and a certain area, you can challenge a certain plane and fight it out in the slaughter field, the female system said. If he had a choice, Jun Changshao really wanted to change the system that dissed him all day and change it to this gentle and super nice female system. The system, slaughter field. Jun Changshao said. The female system explained in a sweet voice, the upper realm is worried that the lower realms will reach a tacit agreement not to fight each other, so they set a rule that all newly entered planes must enter the slaughter field. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, they don't want to, so they have to do something beyond their ability. How many people? How big does it have to be to declare war? At least 2,000 people, and the area has to be the size of a town. Jun Changshao definitely couldn't take out 2,000 people. After all, no matter how much he cheated, it would take some time for 2,000 disciples to break through Wuhuang. As for the size of a town, it was infinitely close, so it wasn't a big problem. However, Jun Changshao asked, if I challenge a plane, they also have to meet the number and area requirements? Yes, the female system said. Forget it then. Jun Changshao said, I'm here to let my disciples gain experience, not to let them fight thousands of people with dozens of people. He had no interest in participating in the slaughtering Azura field, so he continued to focus on expanding the area. Ding! Sect disciples have completed the mission and will receive 20 achievement points. Ding! Sect achievement value, 501,050,000. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. We've finally reached the upper limit. Ever since the number of disciples had been filled, the disciples had been doing sect missions. Their achievement value had increased by varying degrees every day. Today, they had finally met the requirements to increase their achievement value. Shwa! He pulled open the system panel. A button to upgrade appeared on the sect's construction. Jun Changshao tapped on it with his mind, and a crisp prompt sounded in his ears. Ding! Sect construction upgraded to level 9. The upper limit for sect members, contribution points, and achievement points has been increased. The sect's divine weapon pavilion is open. When the notification ended, the system data panel suddenly changed sect construction, level 9 sect members, 500,007,000. Sect contribution points, 49,000,070,000. Sect achievement value, 10700000. It can't be. After seeing the increase in the upper limit, Jun Changshao broke down. Why did it only increase by 20,000 and not from 50,000 to 100,000? The system said, the author didn't calculate it well at the beginning and let the host reach the upper limit of the number of members in a third-rate sect. Therefore, he will definitely cut it down later to match the level and number of members. Fuck. Jun Chang scolded with a smile. The upper limit didn't matter because he was more concerned about the Divine Weapon Pavilion, so he quickly tapped on the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Show. A small panel popped up. This was a panel similar to the Alchemy Pavilion and the Forging Pavilion, but there was no 3D projection device. Instead, it was more like the system store with many small grids. Wang. Suddenly, rows of grids flashed with golden light, giving people the feeling that it was the equipment panel of those players who were fully equipped with golden divine equipment in the level 999 game. Show. Under the golden light, a sword with a dragon coiled around it slowly appeared in the first grid, and the words, Dark Gold, Dragon Blade, were written. Jun Changshao said, just by looking at the name, it looks awesome. Show. Then, a picture of a gun appeared in the second grid, and the words, Daybreak, Shatter the Sky, were written. Is there an introduction? Jun Changshao tapped on the first picture, and the details immediately popped up. Divine Weapon, Dark Gold, Dragon Blade. Grade, Early Divine Grade. Condition, user must be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple. Price, 10,000 contribution points. Divine Grade? Jun Changshao said in surprise, this is a bit amazing. Although he found a lot of equipment in the dimensional battlefield, they were all around the Earth grade. Corresponding to the Falling Star continent, they were only at the Saint grade. As for the Divine grade, he had never seen one before. User must be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple. That's right. The system said, only Lingyan Pavilion disciples are qualified to use it. Can I use it? No. Jun Changshao almost fell. The level 8 Lingyan Pavilion was useless to him. Would the level 9 Divine Weapon Pavilion be useless to him? No way. He quickly tapped on Daybreak and Shatter the Sky. The condition that appeared was still that he had to be a Lingyan Pavilion disciple to use it. It's fine if I can't use it. Jun Changshao said weakly, but why do I still have to spend 10,000 contribution points? Do I have so many contribution points that I have nowhere to spend them? Based on the current situation. The system said, it's like this. Gosheng didn't have many contribution points on the system interface. Occasionally, he would use them to buy martial arts training facilities. However, when disciples went to the life and death secret realm, the system helped him suppress a lot. If there was no need, he could go and buy a lot of contribution points. Okay. Jun Changshao was speechless. Show. The grid in the Divine Weapon Pavilion was still generating all kinds of weapons. There were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, and tridents. There was no exception. The new divine weapons all required disciples to be in the Lingyan Pavilion to use them. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, the Lingyan Pavilion can only accommodate 24 people. It seems that there are only 24 weapons. He guessed wrong. Because after the 24 weapons were gathered, there were more weapons appearing one by one. Jun Changshao tapped on the weapon named Purple Star, Shooting Star. The level that appeared was Saint rank. The requirement was 50 contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion, and the price was 5,000 contribution points. The system said, it seems that the divine weapons in the Divine Weapon Pavilion are not only for the occupants to use. As long as you have a certain amount of contribution points, you can also use them. Jun Changshao said listlessly, I can't use them. As long as one was a disciple, they would more or less receive contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion. However, as a patriarch, he didn't have this function. Unless the requirement was 0 contribution points, it would be impossible for him to use them. Xiao! Xiao! Another pile of weapons appeared one after another. Divine weapons appeared again, and they were categorized in a separate grid. Jun Changshao tapped on it and almost vomited blood. This kind of high-level divine weapon didn't require contribution points in the Lingyan Pavilion. However, the requirement was that one was an elder of the sect, and the price was still 10,000 contribution points. The grid was still producing weapons, and the subsequent requirement was to be at the Hall Master level. Damn it! Jun Changshao held his head and said, "This is purposely to perfectly avoid me." Just as he was about to put the Divine Weapon Pavilion back, the last grid suddenly flashed with a colorful light. Then, a spear-like weapon gradually appeared, and the words, "Pointing out the world," were written on it. Pointing out the world? Jun Changshao scrutinized it carefully, and the expression on his face suddenly collapsed. The lower half of the weapon was similar to a spear. However, when it came to the spearhead, the style changed drastically. This was because it was not a spearhead, nor was it a blade. Instead, it was a palm with the index and middle fingers standing upright. It was a one-handed killing pose, and it emitted an aura of pointing out the world. What the fuck is pointing out the world? Jun Changshao roared, "It's obviously pointing out the ass." Chapter 960. Although there were all sorts of strange weapons appearing in the Divine Weapon Pavilion, at least they were still within the realm of understanding. The last one, the World Pointer, was fucking bullshit. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's getting more and more improper." The system said, "The host infected it." What does this have to do with me? Jun Changshao rolled his eyes and clicked on the strange weapon, showing a detailed introduction: Divine Weapon, World Pointer Grade, Above Divine Condition, Patriarch Exclusive. Price, 20,000 contribution points. Seeing the words, Above Divine, Jun Changshao's eyes widened. There were so many weapons, and the highest was only Divine. The last weapon was actually above Divine. No wonder it was covered in a rainbow light. Wait! Patriarch Exclusive? After seeing this condition, Jun Changshao blurted out uncultured, "Fuck." First, it was the Lingyan Pavilion disciple's weapon, then it was the elder's weapon, and finally it was his own personal weapon. He, who was complaining before, could not be happy now, because he looked at the unique design again and said, "If I take this weapon out in front of others, I'll be a laughing stock." What Jun Changshao could not accept the most was that the weapons in the Divine Weapon Pavilion did not cost more than 10,000 contribution points. Why was his personal weapon worth 20,000 contribution points? Even if you want to bully others, you can't bully others like this. The system said, "It's good enough that you have it, but the host still dislikes it." The shape of the weapon is normal, so it doesn't matter if it's expensive. Jun Changshao roared, "But this kind of personal weapon, do you want me to take it out and stab others in the ass?" The system said, "As the leader of a sect, it's inappropriate for you to do this." Yes. Jun Changshao said. Even if he changed his personal weapon to a sword or even a dagger, but this kind of weapon was similar to the Millennium Kill, to take it out, the system said, "But that's for others. For the shameless host, I think it's a perfect match." Perfect my ass. In terms of quality, the newly appeared Divine Weapon Pavilion was indeed very good. It was even better than the fortuitous encounters in the planar battlefield. However, the requirement to spend contribution points was a headache for Jun Changshao. After all, he couldn't afford to give each core disciple one. Moreover, there were restrictions in the Lingyan Pavilion. Currently, only Li Qingyang and Lu Wancher met the requirements. Shua! Jun Changshao opened the Lingyan Pavilion and said, "Zui Ji and the others should meet the requirements." As expected. Originally, Xiao Ziji only had around 30 merit points. Now, his merit points had risen to 100 points. He had met the requirements to enter. "That's fast," Jun Changshao said. The system said, "I've never seen the host look at it on a daily basis. Perhaps this disciple has already met the requirements and has been neglected by you for a long time." Shut up. Jun Changshao pressed the confirm button. The Lingyan pavilion shook slightly. The words that were originally written began to separate and form a lifelike portrait. Li Qingyang's portrait was a sketch of a desk. Lu Wancher was busy cooking in the kitchen. Xiao Ziji was in a horse stance with a shield in front of him. He looked very imposing. Disciple Xiao Ziji has successfully entered the Lingyan Pavilion and become one of the 24 meritorious officials. He can help the host share the system's sect functions. Please choose from the following: Alchemy Pavilion Control, Smithing Pavilion Control, Talisman Pavilion Control. Jun Changshao thought for a while and said, "Let Zoe Ji manage the Smithing Pavilion." Confirm. Pill Control, ding. Disciple Xiao Ziji has obtained the Smithing Pavilion Control. He can automatically match the number of ores and equipment to be refined. Xiao Ziji, who was busy in the stronghold, was stunned. His soul instantly merged into the void. What is this place? Zoe Ji, you have done your best for the sect. I am very pleased. Today, I will pass on the power of smithing to you with my supreme ability. Jun Patriarch began to bluff again. Xiao Ziji understood everything. He said with a serious expression, "Disciple understands. Disciple will definitely not disappoint Patriarch." After the Alchemy Pavilion, Jun Changshao arranged the Smithing Pavilion's control. He was one step closer to being a hands-off manager. Wang. After Xiao Ziji came out of the Smithing Pavilion, his spiritual energy, muscles, bones, and blood began to transform. His physical strength was also increasing bit by bit. Whoosh whoosh. The aura of advancement exploded. Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others all looked over in shock. How did junior brother Xiao, who was moving bricks, suddenly break through? The momentum of advancement continued for a while. Xiao Ziji entered rank 2 from rank 1. Wu Huang. Although the advancement was only one level, the improvement of the physical body was the most important. He clenched his fist and felt the changes in his physical body. With a burning gaze, he said, "My defense is stronger than before." As for how strong it was, it could only be confirmed through actual combat. Suddenly, Xiao Ziji realized that lines appeared on the back of his right hand. In the end, they formed the word shield. Thus, he asked in surprise, "What does this mean?" Shield? Jun Changshao looked at the Lingyan Pavilion. Xiao Ziji's portrait was stamped with the word shield. He touched his chin and said, "Shield represents defense. It is not much different from the defense I thought of previously. Are there any other disciples who meet the requirements?" First, he chose Lu Qianxian, which was worth 60 merit points. Then, he chose Yi Xingqian, which was worth 53 merit points. Although the two of them were a little far from the maximum, Jun Changshao was already very satisfied. After all, they were only worth 10 and 7 points. Now that they had improved so much, it meant that they had contributed a lot to the sect. The Lingyan Pavilion's merit points could decide whether or not a disciple could enter. It also reflected how much the disciple had contributed to the sect. Jun Changshao continued to check on Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others. Although they did not meet the requirements, most of them were around 80 to 90 points. They were already close to the requirements. That's right. Let's look at Xinyao's. This girl already had 60 merit points before. Then, she comprehended the array and helped him a lot. She might have already met the requirements. As expected. When the name Shengguan Xinyao was written on the blank piece of paper, the merit points that appeared were 100 points. Xinyao's martial arts might not be outstanding, but she has the strongest brain. This Lingyan Pavilion must have a place for her. Jun Changshao thought for a moment. The final point was to confirm. Since the Lingyan Pavilion's function was not to decide who could enter based on martial arts, he would not insist on having disciples with high cultivation levels. Lu Wancher, who was in charge of the dining room, could enter. Shengguan Xinyao, who created martial arts, could also enter. Wang. There was a slight vibration. A portrait gradually appeared on the white paper with the name carved on it. The content of the portrait was Shengguan Xiniao sitting in front of a desk. Thick books were placed around her. The paper under her hand not only had words similar to incantations, but it also had drawings of arrays. Xiniao studies martial arts secret manuals every day. She also has to study arrays. I won't give her the right to control it, Jun Changshao said. The system said, the host is very biased towards female disciples. If Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji heard it, they would definitely agree. Shengguan Xiniao, who was studying secret manuals in the sect of all times, entered the Lingyan pavilion. She sat there with a dull expression. Many martial arts knowledge that she had never had before appeared in her mind. I understand now. She came back to her senses and looked at the martial arts ideas that she had memorized. Suddenly, she had a deeper understanding and began to make large changes. Suddenly, she lowered her head and looked at the back of her right hand. A flickering wisdom character gradually appeared. Whether it's creating martial arts or modifying arrays, it can't be separated from wisdom. Obtaining the wisdom character seal is a well-deserved name, Jun Changshao said. Currently, there were 4 portraits of disciples in the Lingyan pavilion. They were Li Qingyang, Lu Wanshi, Xiao Ziji, and Shengguan Xiniao. Their seals were steady, kitchen, shield, and wisdom respectively. Chapter 961. Jun Changshao looked at some of the core disciples and realized that they did not meet the entry requirements, so he kept the panel. The entry requirement for the Lingyan pavilion was to be a disciple of the sect, so the elders and hall masters could not be nominated. However, from the perspective of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, it was actually quite good. After all, as long as there was a position, there was no need to accumulate merit points. Should I buy it? Jun Changshao opened the Divine Weapon Pavilion again and began to think carefully. The weapons inside, other than his own, were all super awesome in terms of appearance and name. If he gave them to his disciples, their combat power would soar. After finding many opportunities and giving them to his disciples, Gouxing gradually realized the importance of equipment if one's cultivation was not enough. If his disciples had their own divine weapon, it would be equivalent to increasing the strength of the sect. Sigh. After some hesitation, Jun Changshao set his eyes on the world pointer. Since it was a new system function and there was a patriarch's weapon, he had to consider himself first. Buy it. The system said, after all, this function was only unlocked at level 9. It will definitely surprise the host. Jun Changshao. If it was a proper weapon, he would definitely not hesitate. However, the 2-fingered weapon was too weird. Even if it was curved, he could buy it to scratch his itch. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, let's take a gamble. Although the system often instigated him to spend, at the moment, it was indeed not a loss, so it was still quite reliable. He clicked on the world pointer and cancel buttons appeared. Buy. Ding. Host spent 20,000 contribution points and received World Pointer X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding. Sect contribution points, 29,000,700,000. Jun Changshao waved his hand and took out a weapon that looked like a spear and a scepter. Seeing that it looked like it was carved out of some kind of stone, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it, the middle finger and index finger are protruding. Do I really have to stab the butt during a fight? In any case, he was the patriarch of a third-rate sect. If he had to go to the back every time he fought, he would definitely embarrass himself. Although the pointer of rivers and mountains was embarrassing, when Jun Changshao held it in his hand, the powerful aura it released was still very good. It was obvious. It was much stronger than Jade Dragon Asks the Heaven Sword, True Yang Sword, and even Green Dragon Crescent Blade. He had spent 20,000 contribution points to buy such a weird item. If he wasn't a little more impressive, Jun Changshao would really be angered to tears. Patriarch. Li Fei walked over and asked in surprise, what is this? What a special feeling. Jun Changshao said with difficulty, weapons. Weapon? Li Fei's eyes were filled with surprise, and then he said with a smile, it's very compatible with the patriarch. This was definitely flattery, but Lord Gosheng suddenly thought of the system's teasing just now, and the anger in his body suddenly soared. Wang! The pointer of rivers and mountains seemed to have sensed its owner's anger and suddenly trembled slightly. Suddenly, a light began to gather at the two fingers pointing to the sky. Jun Changshao was surprised. At this moment, he could feel his anger flowing from his palm into the weapon. Huff huff. Suddenly, a bright energy gathered between the two fingers. Whoosh! A special energy rushed in through the palm and into Jun Changshao's sea of consciousness, causing him to have a strong urge to teach Li Fei. How magical! Anger can actually be converted into energy. Just as Gosheng was exclaiming, Li Fei, who was standing at the side, had a slight change in expression, and a chill came from his buttocks. Fly! Jun Changshao narrowed his eyes and said, I'm not too sure about the power of this weapon. Today, I'll use you to test it. This expression and the chill coming from his buttocks made Li Fei realize that something was wrong. Then, he ran and howled, Patriarch, your disciple is going to carry bricks. Where are you running to? Jun Changshao strode forward and suddenly waved the pointer of rivers and mountains. He locked onto Li Fei, who had already run a few hundred feet away, and shouted, point. Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, the energy gathered between the two fingers suddenly burst out, and then a long beam of light was dragged out. Li Fei, who had run far away, had a drastic change in expression. The chill on his buttocks turned into a chill. Then, his expression collapsed and he roared loudly, no. Bang! On a floating mountain in the stronghold, Xiao Ziji placed a big pile of bricks on the ground and then stretched lazily. Immediately, his eyes widened. Because suddenly, a beam of light burst out from the main peak. Then, he saw Li Fei fly to the sky with a whoosh. At the same time, his hands were covering his buttocks, and he was screaming, ah ah ah. Li Qingyang, who was measuring on the other peaks, also saw it. So, he said in surprise, what's going on? Damn! Long Xiang raised his hand to look at the sky and said in surprise, Senior brother Li flew so fast. Gradually, everyone's face froze. Because after Li Fei reached the highest point while covering his buttocks, he free fell and finally hit the ground with a bang. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others suddenly realized that this guy didn't fly up by himself. He was beaten up. Let's go. Let's go and see. Whoosh! Whoosh! Not long after, the disciples came to the scene of the fall and found that the ground was in the shape of the Chinese character, Tai. Li Fei was lying on the ground with his eyes rolled up. His buttocks were actually smoking. Li Qingyang and the others' mouths twitched. At this moment, they understood that their junior brother, senior brother, had his buttocks stolen. Jun Changshao, who was standing on the main peak, withdrew the finger of mountains and rivers and said in surprise, it even has a tracking function. This weapon is a bit awesome. Li Fei's speed was not slow. He could have perfectly avoided it. But in the end, no matter how fancy he was, no matter how he dodged left and right, the chasing beam was always locked onto his buttocks. The system said, from the energy just now, it shouldn't be the strongest state of the weapon. Nonsense. Jun Changshao said, I deliberately suppressed it. Otherwise, it would have been pierced. Using anger to transform energy, the host didn't lose anything by buying it. It's hard to tell whether it's a loss or not without trying it on a higher level master. After all, Li Fei was just Wu Huang. With his current strength, he could even poke the sky with an ordinary stick. So, only by fighting with Wu Sheng could he prove his power. Suddenly, Jun Changshao found that there was an arc-shaped groove in the area where his right hand was holding. It looked like some kind of trigger device, so he said in surprise, does it have other functions? The system said, maybe it's a special effect. Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. He pressed his thumb on it. Ding! Fingerprint match successful. User is the patriarch of the sect of all times. Requirements met. Loading ultimate skill 1%. 10%. 20%. Ultimate skill? Jun Changshao said in surprise, that's a bit awesome. 100%. Loading successful. Ultimate skill, 1 look through, activated. Huff huff. After a while, the finger of mountains and rivers instantly exploded with gray air waves, then surged into the sky and gradually gathered together. Li Qingyang and the others, who had just dug Li Fei out, suddenly felt a strong gust of wind blowing around them. They all turned their heads to look and saw a mass of dark clouds gathering in the sky above the main peak, blocking out the sun. What is this? Did the patriarch use a high-level skill? While the disciples were still in shock, the dark clouds hundreds of feet high in the sky separated into two. One of the clouds began to rotate on its own, gradually forming a whirlpool shape, while the other gathered into a palm with 2 fingers pointing vertically. Jun Changshao stood proudly with the finger of mountains and rivers in his hand. He glanced at the disciples on the opposite peak and shouted loudly, "Babies, isn't it cool?" Huff huff. At this moment, the cloud palm with 2 fingers pointed directly at the center of the whirlpool, and the 2 clouds suddenly merged together. Caw! Space instantly shattered. Ah! 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 Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others, who were originally dumbstruck, suddenly felt their minds tremble. An invisible force directly attacked them, and then they all fell to the ground. Their hands covered their smoking buttocks, and their expressions were brilliant beyond compare as they wailed miserably. Jun Changshao said in shock, "What's going on?" Chapter 962. Jun Changshao was very puzzled by the activation of Finger of Mountains and Rivers, which caused the disciples to fall to the ground while covering their buttocks. Could it be that it was an indiscriminate attack that did not differentiate between enemies and teammates? As long as they were in the range, they would be hit. If that was the case, why were Lu Qianqian and Ling Yuanxue fine on the other mountain? Could it be that the killing move is only effective on males? Wait! Suddenly, Lord Changshao recalled that the ultimate skill was called "See Through One Glance." His expression collapsed as he said, "It can't be because I glanced at them, right?" Bingo! Finger of Mountains and Rivers killing move, "See Through," would automatically lock onto whoever the user looked at. Then, after the 2 clouds merged, the user would be attacked by an invisible force. This was his first time using it, so he did not understand the main points. If he was familiar with it and used it properly, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others would not be crying while covering their buttocks. Instead, they would be screaming like pigs being slaughtered. "Babies!" Jun Changshao said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." Whoosh whoosh! The 2 fused clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and the world returned to normal. However, there was still a chilling aura lingering in the air that made people feel a chill in their hearts. As for the groove that Jun Changshao's thumb touched, it was dark, as if it meant that it could not be used for the time being. This kind of sure-kill skill was very powerful. If he had used his piercing gaze earlier when White Egg was surrounded and killed, the scene would have been as beautiful as a painting. More importantly, there were no side effects. Jun Changshao said, "Although the design is a bit weird, and the killing move is a bit wretched, overall, it's still not bad. It's worthy of being my exclusive weapon." The system said, "That's why it's a perfect match." Damaged chrysanthemum, wounds all over the ground, your smile is already yellow. On the Sect of All Times martial arts field, the sound system was playing a song. Lu Wancher and Yao Menjing were leading their fellow disciples to dance. On the construction site of the planar battlefield, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were busy working. Their walking posture was especially strange. It could be seen that although the pain had dissipated, the discomfort from their buttocks was still affecting their bodies. Inside the main palace, Jun Changshao played with the world's pointer lovingly and poured his spiritual energy into it, hoping to activate more of its functions. However, no matter how hard he tried to activate it, no matter how hard he tried, this divine weapon seemed to have withered and had no reaction at all. The system guessed, after unleashing its sure kill ability, it might have entered a weakened state. It can't be. Jun Changshao was on the verge of breaking down. You can't even use a sure kill skill? If it was a sword, it would be fine if it withered. At least it could be used to chop people. However, this world-ruling sword was not suitable for fighting. Loss. Jun Changshao said, a huge loss. Patriarch. Li Qingyang staggered in and said, the construction of peak number 1 has been completed. Thank you for your hard work, Jun Changshao said. Li Qingyang said weakly, Patriarch, what kind of power was that just now? It actually caught us off guard. Recalling the scene of being attacked by the invisible power, the camera suddenly turned to the training field of the sect of all times. A pleasant singing voice came from the sound system, broken chrysanthemums, wounds all over the ground. Jun Changshao said, this is the sure kill skill of my personal divine weapon. It's called See Through at a Glance. Personal divine weapon, sure kill skill. Li Qingyang was confused. Qingyang. Jun Changshao walked down and patted him on the shoulder. During this period of time, you've been rebuilding the sect and building the stronghold. You've really put in a lot of effort. I'll reward you with a divine weapon. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points. Obtained Heavenly Kill, Thunder Mark X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 1900070000. Patriarch. Li Qingyang said, how can this disciple, Shua? Before he could finish speaking, Jun Changshao waved his hand and handed over a dark golden sword with some lightning wrapped around it. This was the Heavenly Kill, Thunder Mark. From the name, it could be seen that it should be related to the thunder attribute. Jun Changshao was not stingy when he bought it for Li Qingyang. It was also because he had worked hard recently and had the thunder punishment body. Because it required a large amount of contribution points, although there were many divine weapons in the divine weapon pavilion, they were destined to not be able to buy all of them. Thus, they had to choose the most suitable one for their disciples. However, Go Sheng was currently crying silently. Looking at his disciple's personal divine weapon and then looking at his own, there was no harm if there was no comparison. Li Qingyang, who was about to refuse, saw the sword that was wrapped in lightning from the hilt to the scabbard, and subconsciously reached out to take it. Patriarch. He exclaimed, this weapon is extraordinary. Yes. Jun Changshao said, divine grade. Divine. Divine grade? Li Qingyang was stunned. Oh my god. This was the highest level weapon in the Falling Star continent. He did not expect the Patriarch to give it to him. Shua! Li Qingyang held the sword and cupped his hands, saying, thank you, Patriarch, for giving me this sword, this disciple, don't talk nonsense. Jun Changshao interrupted, hurry up and pull it out. Let's see if it fits. After he bought it, his soul tried to pull it out from the spatial ring. In the end, not only did he not succeed, but he was also sent flying. This kind of divine weapon could only be used by the disciples of the Purple Smoke Pavilion. Not to mention Go Sheng, who was a sect master, even Yi Xingqian and He Wudi could not pull it out of the scabbard. Yes! Li Qingyang took a deep breath and placed his hand on the hilt. Clang, hiss, hiss, hiss. The Heavenly Kill, which was about 1 meter long, was unsheathed. The body of the sword was white and shiny, and both sides were engraved with dense lines. The edge of the sword gathered golden light, giving off a feeling of invincibility. 1 word, handsome. 2 words, super handsome. At this moment, the word steady on the back of Li Qingyang's hand suddenly appeared. The word steady also appeared on the hilt of the Heavenly Kill and the Heavenly Kill. The two seemed to have established a contract in an instant. Jun Changshao was about to cry. His disciple's personal divine weapon was too damn cool. Looking at his own unique divine weapon, he almost could not help but take it out from the spatial ring and throw it to the readers outside the phone screen. What kind of stupid thing is this? I don't want it anymore. Patriarch. Li Qingyang's eyes were burning. This disciple and this sword have established a mutual understanding. Let's go out and try, Jun Changshao said. Yes. Main peak. Training field. Li Qingyang held the heavenly kill and stood proudly with the heavenly kill. Li Fei, 7 fields, and the others who were resting saw this and were shocked. The sword in second senior brother's hand is so domineering. Tisk, Yixingchen, who was sitting on a boulder far away, took a look and noticed that there were many lines on the sword. He said calmly, swords are used to kill people, not for showing off. Knight Emperor was lucky that he was not there at the time and avoided being seen through. Otherwise, he would be holding his head and squatting in a corner, roaring, a stain on my life. He thought, the sword has the aura of thunder. It should be a rare thunder-type weapon. At this moment, Li Qingyang's eyes turned cold. His right hand gripped the hilt of the sword tightly. Spiritual energy and thunder punishment body burst out and quickly poured into the sword. Hiss hiss hiss, the lines on the heavenly kill and the heavenly kill instantly shone with a golden light. It felt like it was instantly upgraded from +0 to +99999. Oh my god! Li Fei, 7 fields, and the others opened their mouths. Shua! Yixingchen stood up and said in disbelief, divine. Divine grade? He also stood up and said in shock, how can such a powerful thunder-type weapon exist in the mortal continent? Weird. In front of the teleportation gate, the Purple King was confused. Why would I suddenly have the thought of entering the dimension battlefield? He still walked in. When the Purple King walked into the stronghold through the teleportation gate, he saw the golden light on the training field. The thunder type exploded, and his eyes widened. Mandatory question. Why would Hall Leader Z enter the dimension battlefield at this moment? Chapter 963. When Li Qingyang injected spiritual energy and thunder-type power into the heavenly assassin and thunder mark, a mysterious force from the east entered the Purple King's body, forcing him to enter the dimensional battlefield. Why? Because all 3 of them had to be present. This sword. The Purple King widened his eyes and said, could it be from the upper world? Has it been nurtured by the 9 destructions lightning pool? Thunder-type weapons were very common in the mortal continent. They only needed to be embedded with a thunder-type crystal core. However, after Li Qingyang activated the heavenly assassin and thunder mark, the thunder-type power had exceeded the limits of the crystal core in terms of purity and strength. Therefore, Yixingchen, He and the Purple King instantly judged that this was not the mortal continent. The weapon that should exist here might have come from Patriarch. Li Qingyang's eyes were burning. Can I find an opponent to test my sword on? Hall Master Z. Jun Changshao said, spar with me. The Purple King's mouth twitched. It seemed that he suddenly had the idea of entering the dimensional battlefield and not only to show off his surprise but also to spar with him. Okay. The Purple King walked over. This kind of explosive lightning attribute weapon made him very curious about how strong it was. Hall Master Z. Li Qingyang said, let's go out and spar. It was not easy to complete the construction of the main peak. It would definitely not be damaged by the battle. Dozens of miles away from the stronghold of the falling star continent, Li Qingyang floated in the air with his shining weapon. Opposite him, the Purple King was wearing his school uniform and stood with his hands behind his back. Xiao Ziji and the others stood in the distance, watching intently. Hall Master Z was an amazing person who could fight against many alone. Second senior brother asked him to spar with him. Was second senior brother very confident in his weapon? That was not the case. The main reason was that the Purple King was very powerful and could allow Li Qingyang to unleash his power without restraint. If they were from the same sect, they would more or less hold back to avoid hurting each other. Simply put, Hall Master Z was very resistant to beatings. "Let's begin," Jun Changshao said. Shwa! Li Qingyang flew over with his sword in hand, and the power of thunder and lightning on the sword became even more intense. Yi Xingchen thought, with this sword, I am not his match. He Wudi thought so too. The two of them were stronger than Li Qingyang, but with the support of powerful weapons, they would definitely offset the difference in strength. Swish! Golden light flickered, and golden sword chi burst forth. Hiss hiss hiss. Because it carried the power of thunder and lightning, the sound of thunder splashing could be heard clearly. The Purple King gently raised his hand and caught the sword chi in his palm. He shook his head and said, "Kid, although your sword is strong, it can't do anything to the Hall Master." Boom! With a sudden burst of strength, the sword chi shattered. As a demon king who had single-handedly fought against so many earth-ranked powerhouses, his physical strength was extremely terrifying. Even with the support of divine-ranked equipment, it was difficult to injure him. Li Qingyang was not surprised. As long as they could force Hall Master Z to rip off his underwear, that would be their victory. Swish! Swish! He used his movement technique, and streaks of thunder-type sword chi tore through space along with the heavenly slaughter thunder mark. Boom! 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 The Purple King stood on the same spot, and his hands moved frequently. He either sent the sword chi flying or crushed it directly, displaying his terrifying strength. Sigh! Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I thought divine-ranked weapons were very powerful, but it still can't do anything to a saint tier. The system said, Big brother, is your Hall Master Z an ordinary saint tier? Moreover, it added, the power of a high-grade weapon depends on the user's realm. If second disciple was Wuxing now, the situation would be different with a divine-ranked weapon. That's true. Jun Changshao said telepathically, Qingyang, your exclusive divine weapon should have a button. Activate it and fight with Hall Master Z. He wanted to see what the sure-kill skill of the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark was. Button? Li Qingyang locked his mind on the indentation on the sword hilt and said, Is it this? Swoosh! He pressed his thumb on it. Huff huff. Suddenly, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark in his hand trembled violently. Then, it flew out and hung in the air, shining with a dazzling golden light. The Purple King looked up, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Huff huff, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark's hilt was facing up, and the sword tip was facing down. A special attribute quickly burst out from the sword, and then it gathered into the shape of a thundercloud and gradually spread out. Xiao Ziji, Long Xiang, and the others saw the clouds gathering again, and they suddenly remembered the fear of being dominated by a mysterious force. So, they quickly retreated and subconsciously protected their butts. Eldest senior sister. Ling Yuanxue was puzzled. What's wrong with senior brothers? They're sick, Lu Qianqian said lightly. Hiss hiss hiss. After a while, the thundercloud that had expanded by more than 100 feet spurted out lightning snakes, and then gathered in the center of the Heavenly Slaughter Mark. In the thunder mark, the sword tip gradually condensed into a beam of lightning. This, Jun Changshao was shocked. It's a bit like the thunder punishment to punish oneself. Releasing the thundercloud and nourishing the sword with the power of thunder. It must have been tempered in the thunder pool of 9 destruction. The Purple King thought to himself. Li Qingyang, who was standing in mid-air, closed his eyes. The Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark kept gathering lightning, and his body was gradually shrouded in golden light. At the same time, a memory that did not belong to him was transmitted to his sea of consciousness, and finally evolved into a move. Swoosh! Suddenly, Li Qingyang opened his eyes, and there was lightning in his eyes. He said, Thunder control, divine punishment. Boom! As soon as his voice fell, the Heavenly Slaughter Thunder Mark shone brightly, and the beam of light gathered at the sword tip instantly shot out, forming a thunder punishment array and slashing down on the Purple King directly below. What's that? The martial artists in the plain hundreds of miles away saw a sudden burst of lightning in the meteorite continent's stronghold area, and they all widened their eyes. Boom! At this moment, there was an explosion in the area where the lightning fell. Although they were far away, they could hear it clearly, especially when they saw ripples in the air. For a moment, all the martial artists were deeply shocked. On the hill, the area where the Purple King was standing was crazily disturbed by lightning and thunder. After a long time, everything calmed down. The Purple King was wearing red underwear, and his muscular body was exposed, but his purple hair was all standing up because of the lightning. He was not injured. He was just a little embarrassed. "Boy," the Purple King said, "your sword is very powerful, and I took the initiative to use 30% of my strength to defend." Li Qingyang smiled and raised his right hand. Swoosh! The heavenly slaughter thunder mark hanging in the thundercloud quickly flew down and inserted into the scabbard. He cupped his hands and said, "Hall Master Z, thank you for letting me win." Patriarch. He excitedly transmitted his voice, "Is this a sure kill skill?" "That's right," Jun Changshao replied. Li Qingyang, who appeared calm on the surface, was overjoyed in his heart. He was able to force Hall Master Z to use 30% of his strength to defend himself. If he was a high-level martial emperor. No, if he was a sage-to-be, he might be able to defeat him by surprise. The heavenly slaughter thunder mark withered instantly after the explosion. But at least it was a sword. Even if the killing move was in cooldown, at least it was of good quality and could be used to defend against enemies. On the other hand, Gosheng's exclusive divine weapon could not even scratch an itch. Of course. The killing move of the heavenly slaughter thunder mark was a single target attack. Compared to the killing move of the finger of the nation, there was still a big gap. You have already seen whether Qingyang's weapon is strong or not. In front of the main hall, Jun Changshao said with his hands behind his back, "As long as you contribute more to the sect, you will have a chance to get it." Xiao Ziji and the others' eyes were burning. They naturally wanted to get such an awesome exclusive divine weapon. Patriarch. Li Fei said, "How can it be considered as contributing to the sect?" "Very simple." Jun Changshao said loudly, "Actively teach martial arts to your fellow sect members or participate in the sect's construction and sect missions. I will reward you sooner or later. On this day." On a certain foothold mountain that was being developed, Yixingchen and Yiwudi were working hard. Moving bricks, laying bricks, and other construction work were not a problem at all. Higher world, Jie Hall. A few sage-like elders were discussing. The topic was how the falling star continent, which was supposed to enter only 5 years ago, had entered the dimensional battlefield in advance and killed so many people. What was even more puzzling was how some low-level fortuitous opportunities buried in the battlefield could be found by the dimensional warriors in such a short time. Ling Yao, the person in charge of the Jie Hall, said with a cold face, "How do you explain this?" The graceful woman shrouded in clouds said calmly, "The dimensional battlefield was created by the joint efforts of many powerful beings. I am just doing my routine duties. How would I know how the falling star continent came up?" "Humph," someone sneered. "The way I see it, you used your ability to let them in, right?" "If I had such ability, would I still come to the Jie Hall to be interrogated?" the graceful woman said calmly. The elders were furious. The person in charge of the Jie Hall said calmly, "Although this matter has nothing to do with you, as the person on duty in the dimensional battlefield this time, you can't just sit by and do nothing when a mortal plane sneaks in ahead of time." "Understood." The graceful woman turned and said, "I will do my duty," but, she paused and said, "Since the falling star continent was able to sneak into the dimensional battlefield, it might be the will of the heavens." The moment she said this, the elders' expressions changed slightly. The dimensional battlefield was created by the joint efforts of many powerful beings, and layers of barriers were set up. It was impossible for a plane to sneak in without being pointed out. For a tiny mortal plane to be able to do it, it might really be the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens is hard to predict. The person in charge of the Jie Hall was silent for a moment, then said, "However, since they broke the rules, they must be punished." "Light punishment, heavy punishment?" the graceful woman asked. The person in charge said, "A tiny low-level plane naturally doesn't need heavy punishment." Understood. The graceful woman left the Jie hall. She knew that the other party was intimidated by her words and didn't dare to be too harsh on the falling star continent. After all, the people of the Jie hall didn't dare to go against the will of the heavens. Speaking of which, the graceful woman returned to her own palace and leaned against the back of the chair. She thought to herself, suddenly appearing in the dimensional battlefield and being able to come and go freely, is this really the will of the heavens? Master, the elder said, since the Jie hall wants a light punishment, what should we do? The graceful woman thought for a moment, then said, according to the authority of the enforcers, if there is a violation of the rules, we can dispatch battlefield spirits to attack the stronghold. Master, what level of battlefield spirits do you want to mobilize? Mystic as the main, Earth as the support. Yes. The elder hurriedly left. The master had reduced the punishment to the lightest. Since the Jie hall chose this difficulty, they definitely wouldn't say anything. Falling Star Continent. The elder said, you are very lucky to be protected by the master. Chapter 964. Li Qingyang's personal divine weapon had shocked all the disciples, so in order to contribute to the sect, they were all working hard. The most diligent were Yi Xingchen and Yi Wudi. Both of them were experienced and knew how much a powerful weapon could increase a martial artist's strength. A few days later, buildings were erected on the 3 floating mountains, gradually becoming the size of a town. While the disciples were busy, Goxing wasn't idle either. As long as he had time, he would take out his treasure hunting tool and wander around the plain battlefield without any scruples. Li Tiantian, Mu Honglian, and the others didn't come in anymore because they couldn't find an opponent. It was a complete waste of the Surge Talisman, so they might as well cultivate in the sect. This won't do. After finding a few opportunities, Jun Changshao said gloomily, the purpose of the plain battlefield is to train in dungeons. Without an opponent, how can they break through faster? He really hoped that the Scarlet Sea continent and Lingyun continent would send martial artists over so that the disciples could fight to their heart's content. Unfortunately, after the last massacre, not to mention the 2 planes, even the first and second echelon planes were like mice seeing cats when they saw the falling star continent martial artists. In short, he was too pretentious, and no one dared to play with him anymore. Patriarch. Li Qingyang hurriedly walked in and said, a group of monsters suddenly appeared outside. Monsters? Jun Changshao stood up and released his spiritual sense. Outside the stronghold, hundreds of armored soldiers appeared out of nowhere. The armor didn't wrap a person, but an existence similar to a shadow. 2 pairs of eyes flickered with a gloomy light. What is this? Jun Changshao said with a face full of surprise. The system said, not human. Aren't you talking nonsense? Jun Changshao said. The female system said, dear participant, this is a battlefield ghost created by a supreme being of the upper realm. If a continent violates the rules, it will be ordered to crusade against it. I see. Jun Changshao's expression changed, and he said in shock, their appearance outside the stronghold means that I have violated the rules? Yes. The female system said. Fuck. Jun Changshao broke down and said, ever since I was punished by the lightning, I've been abiding by the rules. How could I have broken the rules? The system said, maybe it's because the host is crazily stealing opportunities. Jun Changshao was speechless. You opened up the battlefield and sealed the fortuitous opportunities inside. What's wrong with me finding them with my own abilities? The Falling Star continent has used illegal means to sneak into the dimensional battlefield. They have violated the rules of the upper realm and destroyed the balance that should have been there. They will immediately suffer the punishment of the battlefield spirit. A heavy voice resounded through the sky. Jun Changshao, with such a huge commotion, the entire battlefield must have heard it. That was right. When the deep voice rang out, all of the most powerful warriors in the planar battlefield heard it clearly. Instantly, A look of shock appeared on their faces. Oh my God! The falling star continent had been smuggled here. I was wondering how it was possible for only a few dozen people to enter a plane. It turns out that they used illegal means to smuggle themselves in. The upper realm has mobilized the battlefield spirits. This is going to be a good show. What are the battlefield spirits? The battlefield spirits are creatures created by the mighty beings of the upper realm. Not only are they strong, but they also have the ability to conquer planes. As long as they punish them, the worst outcome is the destruction of the base. They're that powerful? When the planar battlefield was first formed, a powerful plane sent in a few thousand Earth-level powerhouses, which seriously affected the balance of the battlefield. In the end, they were punished by the battlefield spirits and expanded to the strongholds in the cities. In just a few days, they were razed to the ground. In that case, the falling star continent is going to be unlucky? Of course. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go and take a look. Let's go. Therefore, the camera zoomed up infinitely. One could clearly see large groups of martial artists flying out from various planar bases. Right now, they were more than happy to be onlookers and witness how the falling star continent was punished by the battlefield ghosts with their own eyes. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. As Jun Changshao had killed many people when he was fighting for the opportunity, now that he was punished by the upper realm, many warriors rushed over to watch him make a fool of himself. The happiest ones were the Crimson Sea continent and the Lingyun continent. After all, they were the ones who were bullied the most. Now that the upper realm could not tolerate the falling star continent and had personally sent the battlefield spirits to punish them, it could be considered as avenging themselves. Kid! Hong Yao, who was sitting in the main hall, sneered. You can continue to act recklessly. Palace Master. An elder hurried over and said excitedly, according to the report from the spies, hundreds of battlefield spirits have appeared outside the falling star continent stronghold and are preparing to attack. Ha ha ha. Hong Yao stood up and laughed. Let's go and watch the show. Under normal circumstances, he would not dare to go to the falling star continent stronghold openly. Now that the battlefield spirits had blocked the falling star continent stronghold, the strongest sect of all times must be busy. It should not be a problem for him to watch the show. The Lingyun continent, the Imperial Sword continent, and other planes that had a grudge against Jun Gosheng also sent warriors over. On one hand, they wanted to watch the show. On the other hand, they wondered if they should take advantage of the situation to add insult to injury. City Lord. In the main hall of the Nine Heavens continent stronghold, an elder said, the battlefield spirits have not appeared for a long time. Are you not going to take a look at the falling star continent this time? Mo Shangsheng said indifferently, only a fool would go. The elder was stunned. Why do you say that? Mo Shangsheng leaned back in his chair and said, the planar battlefield enforcer this time ascended from the falling star continent. How could he not know that someone has illegally snuck in? This. The elder thought for a moment and said, of course he knows. Mo Shangsheng said, it has not been a day or two since the falling star continent snuck in. During this time, they killed many people and were even punished by lightning. But they are still fine, aren't they? The elder said, City Lord, are you saying that the planar battlefield enforcer is biased towards the falling star continent? Mo Shangsheng said, although he has ascended, it is still a plane he once lived in. It is reasonable for him to be biased. If that is the case, why did he send the battlefield spirits to punish the falling star continent? The elder was puzzled. Mo Shangsheng pondered for a moment and guessed, if I am not wrong, the falling star continent has been too arrogant. If the higher realm knows about it, the planar battlefield enforcer can only put on a show. The battlefield spirits will not stop until the stronghold is destroyed. The elder said, even if they put on a show, the falling star continent will be done for. Mo Shangsheng shook his head and said, the battlefield spirits are also divided into ranks. If they are not of a high rank, they might not be able to deal with the falling star continent. City Lord. It was at this moment that a subordinate walked in and said, according to the intelligence sent from the front line, 255 battlefield wraiths have appeared outside the stronghold on the Starfall continent. 150 of them are yellow, 100 of them are black, and 5 of them are earth. Look! Mo Shangsheng was not surprised and said, I guessed right. They are just putting on a show. He did not think that a few hundred battlefield specters, especially when they only had 5 Earth characters, would pose a threat to the falling star continent, since they were able to kill tens of thousands of people while fighting for the fortuitous encounter. The Scarlet Sea continent and the Lingyun continent have probably run over to watch the show. If the battlefield spirits can't do anything to the falling star continent, they will be in trouble. Mo Shangsheng said, so, whoever goes to watch the show must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. The elder said respectfully, City Lord, you are so wise. I admire you. The falling star continent stronghold. Hundreds of soulless armored soldiers were lined up neatly. However, they did not attack immediately, as if they were waiting for orders from above. Although there are many of them, they don't seem to be very strong. Jun Changshao thought for a moment and said, Qingyang, quickly inform Li Tian and the others to crush the Surge Talisman and come in. Yes. Li Qingyang hurriedly left. Jun Changshao sat on a chair that had been set up outside the hall. He crossed his legs and said with a smile, I was worried about finding a sparring partner, and someone delivered an experience bag in time. Chapter 965. Mu Honglian, Li Tian, and the others crushed the Surge Talisman and entered the planar battlefield. They saw hundreds of armored soldiers standing outside the stronghold. Their eyes flashed with fighting spirit. They had a premonition. Finally, he could fight with a high-level martial artist to his heart's content. Qingyang, I've sinned. Jun Changshao said, you will assist Li Tian and the others with these yellow level ones. Although the battlefield specters weren't that strong, there were still more than 200 of them. The disciples could use them for battle, but they had to ensure their safety. Yes. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were fully armed. They had a bunch of Earth-level equipment, but they couldn't compete with the Xian-level ones who were comparable to half-saints. If they fought the yellow-level ones, they could completely suppress them. They were fully equipped with Earth-level equipment. It wasn't a joke. Hall Master Z, Old Ding. Jun Changshao said, I'll leave the 5 Earth-level ones to you. The Purple King said indifferently, there's no need for Old Ding to do anything. I can handle it myself. He, who used Pan Ting, was that confident. Jun Changshao said, the battlefield specters don't have physical bodies and are wearing extraordinary armor. They might be stronger than the Earth-level martial artists. Don't let your guard down. Understood. The Purple King was strong, but his intelligence would sometimes drop. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died so many times. Jun Changshao was also unrestrained sometimes, but he had more considerations. He could make up for his shortcomings in this aspect. Therefore, he was a good partner for the golden transvestite. Elder son, Elder Nyo. I'll leave the Xian-level ones to you. Yes. Jun Changshao did a simple distribution. The core disciples and Li Tian would deal with the yellow-level battlefield specters. Jiangye and Gongsun Haohai would deal with the Xian-level ones. The Purple King and Old Ding would deal with the Earth-level ones. Little Dragon and Xiao Maxian would definitely be involved. These 2 contracted beasts were also the main force of the Xian-level ones. Ding! Side mission activated. Jun Changshao had just finished arranging everything. When he heard the system notification, he pulled out the mission panel in a familiar manner. It read, Kill 255 invading battlefield spirits, elite mission. TSK. He rubbed his hands and said, not only are they a bunch of experience bags, but they're also a bunch of money givers. Disciples, heed my command. Jun Changshao stood up and said in a clear voice. Swoosh! Whoosh! Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji immediately straightened their backs. Shwa! Jun Changshao pointed outside the stronghold and said, "Exterminate them all for this king." Yes. Swoosh. Shwa. Whoosh. The disciples flew down from the floating mountain and landed outside the stronghold, facing off against the battlefield specters that were hundreds of feet away. Patriarch Jin Dijuan walked over and asked, "Do you want to set up a lightning formation?" "No need," Jun Changshao said. With so many battlefield specters, the disciples could use them to train. It would be boring if they all exploded. Moreover, they were all wearing armor, which meant that their defense was extraordinary. Normal lightning formations might not be able to do anything to them. Using a new type of lightning formation would be a waste of the lightning punishment power. Outside the stronghold, hundreds of battlefield specters and dozens of Sect of all times disciples faced off. Although they had not started fighting yet, the atmosphere was already tense. Shwa! 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 At this moment, many martial artists flew over at high speed, and then stopped in midair in the distance. These people. Jun Changshao clasped his fingers together and rested his chin on the back of his hand. He muttered, "They're probably here to laugh at us." The palace master of the Blue Sea Palace from the Crimson Sea continent also rushed over with his people. When he saw the hundreds of well-equipped battlefield specters, a cold smile appeared on his face. "Palace Master, the battlefield specters aren't that strong. There are only 5 Earths," an elder said in confusion. Hong Yao said indifferently, "Since the upper realm has sanctioned the falling star continent, they won't only send this few. There will definitely be stronger specters later." Whoosh! 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 The martial artists from the Lingyun continent and the Imperial Sword continent also flew over. The few big shots were not far from each other. They glanced at each other, and smiles appeared on their faces. They had been tortured by Jun Changshao to the point that they did not dare to go out. Now, not only were they here to watch the show, but they were also in a good mood. If they could personally witness the falling star continent being flattened, it would be even better. Are these battlefield specters? The armor he's wearing is clearly extraordinary. Damn! The equipment those martial artists from the falling star continent are wearing seems to be even better. Don't tell me they're all Earths. Many people locked onto Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others. Envy, jealousy, and hatred appeared in their eyes. On the battlefield, wearing a full set of black tier equipment was already very powerful. Wearing a full set of Earth tier equipment was simply unimaginable. Palace Master. The Palace Master of the Blue Sea Palace said telepathically, "These disciples have good equipment. We can snatch it after they're killed." Hong Yao said, "Later on, act according to my signal." Yes. Not only did the Red Sea continent have their eyes on the equipment of the Sect of all times disciples, but the experts from other dimensions also had the same idea. Of course, they did not dare to attack now. They would wait for the battlefield specters to kill them and then find the right time to snatch it. Therefore, in front of Jun Changshao, there were not only battlefield specters but also a group of martial artists from various dimensions with ulterior motives. Whoosh! 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 At this moment, the neatly arranged battlefield specters began to sway. The dark light in their eyes became brighter, as if some seal had been undone and they had awakened from their slumber. "They're about to attack," someone said. The martial artists who were watching the show widened their eyes. Clearly, they did not want to miss the show of battlefield specters punishing a continent. Whoosh! Whoosh! Hundreds of battlefield specters that seemed to have awakened raised their hands. Light flickered in their palms, and black spears appeared out of thin air. The 5 specters standing at the front raised their heads and locked their eyes on the Purple King and Old Ding. Buzz! The space rippled lightly and disappeared into thin air. Boom! Boom! In an instant, there were bursts of explosions in the sky. The Purple King and Old Ding had already appeared above and were fighting fiercely with the 5 Earth-level battlefield specters. Whoosh! 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 Energy spread, and a strong wind blew. All the martial artists widened their eyes. That purple-haired guy's clothes and pants exploded one after another during the fight, leaving only his red underwear. Moreover, he was fighting against 4 battlefield specters alone. Awesome! Boom! The Purple King landed a heavy punch on the target's armor. Although it was sent flying, it quickly flew up again. Judging from its speed, it was obvious that it was not injured. As expected. Jun Changshao said, its defense is very strong. TSK, the Purple King sneered. Purple demon aura erupted and turned into a sky full of fist shadows. For a moment, the CPU and graphics card were running crazily. The author's typing was stuttering and frame dropping. However, in the face of such terrifying attacks, the battlefield specters flew out again and again without any signs of injury. The most depressed one was Ding Xingwang. He was fighting fiercely with a battlefield specter, but no matter how he used the 5 ultimate palm, he could not do anything to it. If it was a human, it would have been disturbed by the 5 ultimate chi. However, this kind of creature without a physical body could not be affected at all. The Earth battle was destined to take some time, so the camera turned to the lower sky. Jiangye, Gongsun Haohai, and the others were already fighting with the black battlefield specters. Although their armor was not as strong as the Earth battle specters, they were also very durable. Even when little Long Long burned them with flames, they did not suffer any damage. Li Qingyang shouted, "Go!" Swoosh! Xiao Ziji was the first to rush up. As the main tank of the sect of all times, he would definitely take the lead in this kind of battle. The yellow battlefield specters did not just stand there. They all rushed over, and strange energy gathered in their spears. Then, they pierced through the void and condensed into beams of light. Shield erect. Xiao Zuiji abruptly stopped in his tracks. He placed both of his hands on the ground and lifted them up with the strength to pull up a mountain. Swoosh! 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 Thick earth walls appeared one after another and then lined up in an arc boom. Boom! The beams of light smashed into the earth walls like cannonballs. Although the impact was very strong, Xiao Ziji stood firmly on the ground like a rock. Swoosh! Li Fei rushed out of the shield wall one step faster than the others. Psionic energy gathered in his right foot, and he suddenly kicked out in the air. Only a footprint could be seen viciously pressing forward with the force of his foot. Bam! One of the frontmost battlefield specters was kicked away. Li Fei did not continue fighting. He hurried back because countless beams of light were shot at him. Boom, boom, boom. After a series of explosions, the earth walls erected in front of Xiao Ziji collapsed one after another. He also took a few steps back before he could stabilize his body. 100 battlefield specters that were comparable to Wu Huang were holding weapons of high quality and condensed beams of light. They were very powerful. It was understandable that he could not withstand them. Swoosh! Suddenly, a sword light flashed. Ding! 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 The sound of weapons colliding could be heard. Faint sword marks were left on the chests of the dozen or so battlefield specters. Yi Xingchen put away his sword and frowned. Huff, huff. Huff, huff, huff. Suddenly, a heavy energy wave came from the right. A battlefield specter stabbed at him with a long spear. Swoosh! Yi Xingchen was about to counterattack when a beam of light flew past him and hit the specter's helmet. Then, the specter's head tilted to the side and fell to the ground. The helmet was pierced through. Crack! Xiao Ziji held his AWM and loaded it. This kind of hot weapon should be harmless to Emperor-level experts. However, the bullets were condensed with hexagram stones. Dead? Jun Changshao saw the battlefield specter that was hit by the bullet lying motionless on the ground. The light in its eyes was gradually fading. He then at everyone and said, "Hit their heads." Bam! As soon as he said that, Li Qingyang had already rushed forward. Under the infusion of spiritual energy, the heavenly slaughter lightning tattoo pierced through the target's helmet. When the specter fell to the ground and the light in its eyes faded, Jun Changshao was immediately certain. The battlefield specter's defense was strong, but it could be killed as long as its head was hit. Yi Xingqian also realized this. In the next attack, he tried not to condense his sword aura to cause damage in a large area. Instead, he changed it to a single point. Bam! Bam! 2 battlefield specters were hit in the head. Then, they paused in midair for a moment before falling to the ground. Yi Xingqian held his sword in midair and said calmly, "Trash." Li Fei, 7 fields, and the others followed suit. They poured spiritual energy into their true yang swords and attacked the opponent's head from various angles. They killed 5 or 6 specters in a short time. The main characters of this battle were not them. It was Li Tiantian, Mu Honglian, and the others. Therefore, after killing a few battlefield specters, they began to take a step back and help their fellow sect members fight. Red Sky Flame Slash. 7 Mysterious Light Break. Boom! 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 Li Tiantian and the others, with the help of surge talismans and equipment, began to fight fearlessly with the battlefield specters that were comparable to emperors. They were only peak martial kings. They relied on various items to break through to emperors. Fighting against such martial artists, their martial Dao experience points were definitely increasing by the minute. The martial artists who were watching the show were dumbfounded. There were only a few dozen martial artists from the Falling Star continent, but they were not at a disadvantage at all when fighting against hundreds of battlefield specters. They had seen how awesome Jun Changshao was. If his disciples were also like monsters, then it would be a bit too shocking. This was just a sect, and they were smuggled in. If the other side's martial artists moved in en masse, their combat strength would be even more terrifying. The strength displayed by Jun Changshao and his disciples made many people speculate that the Falling Star continent might be a very complicated plane. In fact, when the sect of all times was fighting against the battlefield specters, the top experts of the Falling Star continent were so worried that they could not eat. They originally had more than 3 years, but suddenly it shortened, making them have a deep premonition that their time away from death had accelerated. Son. In a large family, an old man who had just come out of seclusion said solemnly, 2 years later, I will enter the dimensional battlefield. I will leave the family to you. Father. The young man next to him knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his face like rain. Disciple. On a mountain peak somewhere, a middle-aged man with a sword on his back said in a deep voice, after I enter the dimensional battlefield, I must not neglect my cultivation. I still need you to pass on the ultimate sword Dao. A 15 or 16-year-old youth wiped his tears and said, I will not let you down, master. I will definitely bring the ultimate sword Dao to greater heights. Such scenes of life and death played out one after another in the Falling Star continent. The first batch of experts who were confirmed to be entering the dimensional battlefield also began to make arrangements for their deaths. At the altar in the middle continent, the remaining time shown on the Earth Spirit instrument suddenly jumped from 1 year to 1 year. Oh no! The high priest stood up and broke down. The time to enter the dimensional battlefield has been brought forward again. What is going on? Boom! Boom! Outside the Falling Star continent stronghold, Li Tiantian, Mu Changhong, and the others were killing the battlefield specters with the help of their 6-piece god equipment set seniors. Every time they killed one, the stronghold's area would expand by a few hundred feet. TSK, TSK. Jun Changshao said in surprise, this is also an increase. The female system said, Dear participant, the battlefield specters created by the upper realm's powerhouses increase the stronghold's area by a lot after killing them. I can see that, Jun Changshao said. Boom! At this moment, a loud boom came from the sky. The Purple King hit an Earth battlefield specter's head dozens of times and finally blew it up like a watermelon. All the martial artists watched with trepidation. This exposed guy blew up an Earth powerhouse with just his fists. His strength was too terrifying. Jun Changshao did not care about the battlefield specters that were killed. Instead, he looked at the stronghold and found that it had expanded by 1,000 feet. He grinned and said, "This experience is super awesome." He was feeling great. The high priest on the altar of the central continent cried. That was because the time limit did not stop after a year. It was decreasing day by day. Boom! Inside the stronghold, Li Tian pierced through the battlefield specters with the True Yang sword. The number of days on the Earth Spirit instrument decreased from 360 days to 359 days. High Priest. An elder said tragically, "What should we do?" Sigh. Seeing that the time limit had decreased by another 2 days, the high priest shook his head and said, "What will come will come. It doesn't matter whether it's fast or slow. Inform the major sects and have them prepare to head to the planar battlefield at any time." Yes. When the news reached the ears of the major sects and top-notch powerhouses, they all sighed and prepared to die on the battlefield. City Lord Mu. In the main hall of the Sect of all times, Li Luoqiu said, "Red Lotus is cultivating in seclusion." Mu Changhong stood up. He seemed to have aged several decades. Then, he walked to the cafeteria and said, "Miss Lu, can you give this old man some fried rice?" "Sure." Soon, several bowls of fried rice were placed on the table. Mu Changhong raised his chopsticks with difficulty. Thinking about how he was about to enter the planar battlefield and part with his daughter, he sadly put down his chopsticks. "Daughter." He thought to himself, "Father really hopes that you can break through to Wu Huang after the planar battlefield ends." Boom! Outside the stronghold on the Starfall continent, a flaming fist smashed through the battlefield specter's head. Mu Honglian retracted her fist and said with a fervent gaze, "Break through to Wu Huang after a few more battles." Chapter 966. Although the battlefield specters created by the upper realm did not have a physical body, they were no different from martial artists in terms of fighting style, especially with equipment support and various martial arts skills. Li Tian, Mu Honglian, and the others fought to their heart's content. Not only did their experience points increase, but they also gained a new understanding of the sect's martial arts. The most important thing in martial arts was actual combat. The Sect of all times disciples relied on the various resources provided by Jun Changshao to quickly improve their qualifications and level, but their biggest flaw was the lack of accumulation. Now that hundreds of battlefield specters were fighting, it was a form of accumulation. Fight to your heart's content. Grow to your heart's content. Jun Gosheng, who was sitting outside the basilica, said with a smile. If a sect wanted to become truly powerful, it was necessary to have disciples who had gone through life and death training and were extremely fierce. Boom! Boom! All kinds of energy were released wantonly outside the stronghold, dyeing the world in colorful lights. All the martial artists were stunned. The dozens of Sect of all times disciples did not seem to have high levels, but their bodies and strength were extraordinary. What kind of cultivation did they go through to reach such a level? Many people came to laugh at the falling star continent, to see how the stronghold would be destroyed by the battlefield specters, but in the end, they were just passers-by. Boom! Boom! High up in the sky, the purple craggy monster monarch continued to bombard and kill another Earth battlefield specter. After recovering to the level of being smuggled down from the upper realm, he had experienced many battles with many opponents, but it always ended in a draw. Today, he faced 4 Earth battlefield specters and killed 2 of them, which meant that as long as his opponents did not run away, he could definitely kill them. This is only with his fists. Jun Changshao said to himself, if Hall Leader Z is equipped with an exclusive divine weapon, won't he be able to kill everything? Flaming storm. Lil Dragon's childlike shout was heard. In the middle of the sky, a powerful flame appeared in the form of a tornado, instantly covering an area of tens of meters and swallowing more than 20 black battlefield specters, unleashing the most explosive impact and burning. Although these creatures had strong defenses, they were still unable to resist absolute power, so their eyes gradually dimmed and they were completely evaporated. Plop! Plop! One after another, armors that had been steamed red fell from the sky. Jun Changshao felt rather pained. After all, it could be considered a victory trophy. Even if it wasn't broken down into ores, it would still be fine. In the end, it was all burned up. The battle between the top powers was extremely intense. From the looks of it, the Sect of all times already had the absolute upper hand. If the other party did not run, it would only be a matter of time before they were all wiped out. It was impossible to run away. After all, they were under the command of the Enforcer, and they would not stop until they destroyed the stronghold on the falling star continent. Terrifying. What a bunch of monsters. What kind of plane is this falling star continent? The cultivators of the various planes were focused on being qualified passers-by. At the same time, they were making all sorts of wild guesses about the plane Jun Changshao was in. In short, to be able to nurture so many monstrous geniuses, it was definitely not an ordinary world. It definitely had terrifying strength that caused others to be terrified. When they launched a large-scale invasion, the world would definitely lose its color. Central State, Altar. The Sect of all times was doing their best to kill the battlefield spirits. The number of days on the Earth Spirit instrument decreased again and again, until the High Priest and the others leaned against the wall weakly. 5 years had been shortened to a few hundred days. This was too big of a leap. High Priest. An elder said sorrowfully, "The higher realm can't wait for us to enter the dimensional battlefield and die. Did we offend someone? That's why we're being punished so cruelly." After a long time, the number of days stopped decreasing after 125 days. Their hearts were completely cold. At first, there was still close to 2 years. In less than 2 hours, it had been shortened to only 4 months. This sudden change almost made the High Priest vomit blood on the spot. They had offended someone. They must have offended someone. What? There are only 4 months left before we enter the dimensional battlefield? When the major sects and families of the falling star continent received the news, they were all worried and hesitant. Yuan Gongzi. In the courtyard of the Demon Emperor's Gate, a subordinate reported happily, "The time to enter the dimensional battlefield has suddenly shortened from 2 years to 100 days. This is good news." Yuan Gongzi's eyes lit up. He had long known about the falling star continent being selected to enter the dimensional battlefield. It was because of this that he suddenly jumped out in the open to challenge the righteous sections. His goal was to take advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble. As a demon sect that was almost eradicated by the righteous sects, they naturally did not care about the safety of the continent. It was enough as long as they could take revenge. Now that the time to enter the dimensional battlefield had been shortened, when a large number of experts entered, the overall strength of the falling star continent would be greatly reduced. When that time came, they would definitely achieve good results. Pass down the order. Tell all the branches not to act rashly. After waiting for a few thousand years, 100 days would not make much difference. Therefore, the Demon Emperor's Gate temporarily gave up on their original strategy of causing a ruckus. They let their disciples conserve their energy first before doing something big. It might even be possible for them to unify the continent. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yuan Gongzi said, "There's hope for the revival of the demon sect." Outside the stronghold of the falling star continent, damaged armors were scattered on the ground. Some of the helmets had been pierced through, while others had been burned to ashes. They had lost all their functions. All the martial artists were dumbfounded. They stood rooted to the ground, their eyes filled with disbelief. In less than 2 hours, the 255 battlefield specters had been annihilated by the disciples without Jun Changshao even making a move. This speed was simply too fast. The Blue Sea Palace Lord's mouth twitched violently. This time, he had brought people here to see Jun Changshao make a fool of himself. In the end, not only did he not make a fool of himself, but he was also frightened. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Hong Yao realized something and hurriedly signaled to his subordinates. Return to the stronghold. He had thought that the falling star continent would be severely damaged, and even razed to the ground. Now that the battlefield wraiths had been wiped out and there were no more reinforcements, something must have happened to him and his subordinates here. Whoosh! Whoosh! The martial artists of the Red Sea continent finally got the signal from the palace lord, but they did not rush over to snatch the equipment. Instead, they flew back to their stronghold as fast as they could. The Lingyun continent, the Imperial Sword continent, and the other planes also sensed that something was wrong. They immediately evacuated. Even if they were given money to watch the show, they would definitely not be willing. However, by the time their IQ had completely come online, it was already too late. Because just as they moved, the thunder array hidden between heaven and earth suddenly flashed out, enveloping several martial artists of the plains who had a grudge with the falling star continent. He. Jin Dejuan hovered on a certain hill, covered his face and laughed strangely. You guys were so focused on watching the show that you didn't even notice that someone had secretly set up the array. Hiss! Hiss! Dozens of chain thunder arrays covered a large area, and the flowing light barrier erupted with a power that made one's heart tremble. Hong Yao and the others who were trapped inside had ugly expressions. Oh no! Everyone! Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the hall, stood up, held a loudspeaker, and said with a smile, "There is no free lunch in this world. You came from afar to watch the performance of our sect of all times. It's a bit embarrassing to leave without paying." Chapter 967. There were at least tens of thousands of martial artists who came to the Falling Star Continent's stronghold. Jun Changshao knew that at least 90% of them were here to watch the show, especially planes with grudges like the Crimson Sea Continent. Look! This is your right. But my sect of all times disciples put in so much effort to put on a show, and you just leave after watching? That's not right. Luckily, Gosheng had foresight and asked Elder Zhen to set up a formation in advance, setting up layers of lightning formations outside the spectator area. Otherwise, everyone would have run away long ago. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Purple King and Ding Xingwang flew over and hovered outside the formation. They released their auras and shrouded the area, forming a second layer of defense to prevent anyone from escaping. There was a lightning formation in front and an earth formation behind. The martial artists from the Crimson Sea Continent and the Lingyun Continent were instantly confined to a small area. There were quite a few of them, at least 4,000 to 5,000. Hong Yao's expression turned even uglier. Isn't it good to drink tea at home? Why did they have to come here to watch the show? Now, they were completely surrounded. Even if they managed to fight their way out, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. The powerhouses from the Lingyun continent and the Imperial Sword continent were also regretting coming over to join in the fun. Otherwise, they would not have ended up like this. On this point, Mo Shangsheng from the Nine Heavens continent was smarter. He had been sitting in the stronghold from the start, only paying attention to the matters of the Falling Star continent and not participating. Jun Changshao. Hong Yao said with a cold face, "What do you mean by this?" The powerhouses from the other planes glared at him. Although the situation was dangerous, they had to be firm. Boom! At this moment, a lightning formation was directly detonated, instantly blasting the surrounding space into pieces. The violent lightning attribute immediately spread out. What Zhen Dejuan detonated was a new type of lightning formation, using the power of lightning punishment as the formation core. Although it did not form a chain of explosions, it deeply shocked the hearts of the earth powerhouses. Everyone. Jun Changshao said calmly, "Pay up or not, it's up to you. The sect of all times will not force you." System. Zhen Dejuan deliberately detonated a lightning formation to intimidate them, and shamelessly said that they would not force them. This shameless fellow should be able to withstand the lightning punishment without using the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Pagoda, right? The expressions of Hong Yao and the others, who were originally very unyielding, changed again and again when they saw the power of the new lightning formation. Of course. Jun Changshao said, "If you buy a ticket, you can definitely leave safely." Now that the stronghold had expanded to such an extent, he could not be bothered to kill more people. The only reason he had surrounded the cultivators was for money. June Patriarch. A powerhouse of all times said of all times of all times. Calm N. Calm. Ors. Oh. To be honest, June Changxiao's price was not expensive. But there were more than 200 cultivators in this world. It would be a bit too much to pay. Okay. After thinking for a while, the powerhouse gritted his teeth and said, the Lingyuan continent will pay 1,000 spirit stones for the life of a yellow or mystic realm cultivator. It was definitely a good price. Swish. The powerhouse waved his hand and threw over a dozen space rings. A total of 220 people from the Lingyuan continent are here. There are 220,000 spirit stones in here. June Patriarch, please check. June Changxiao took them and injected his spiritual sense into them. He found that these spirit stones were several times stronger than natural spirit stones. He smiled and said, you can take them away safely. Goodbye. The powerhouse cupped his hands and left with hundreds of his subordinates through the gap of the lightning formation. The Purple King and Old Ding pretended not to see it. June Patriarch. After leaving the lightning formation area, the powerhouse said via voice transmission, it's a deal. Half of the spirit stones will be returned. June Changxiao said via voice transmission, don't worry. June is a man of his word. He had already used this tactic of deliberately finding someone to put on a show. Although the target this time had changed to a stronger warrior, the effect was still surprisingly good. June Patriarch. A powerhouse took the initiative to say, how much do we need to pay? June Changxiao said, the price is the same for planes with no grudges. 1,000 spirit stones per head. Here. The powerhouse paid according to the number of spirit stones per head. When the cultivators from other planes saw this, their stubbornness immediately dissipated. They obediently threw over all the spirit stones with different names but similar effects. The main thing was that they did not extort much. After weighing the pros and cons, the powerhouses would rather spend money to avoid disaster. If you asked them to raise the price to 10,000 or 100,000 spirit stones, they would probably risk their lives to insist. Therefore, Go Sheng was very experienced in extorting people. He could make the extorted angry but have no choice but to compromise. The Scarlet Sea continent, Lingyun continent, and other planes did not say anything. They could tell that planes with no grudges were cheap, and planes with grudges were definitely expensive. If they wanted to spend money to avoid disaster, they would probably have to bleed a lot. Everyone. At this moment, June Changxiao looked at Hong Yao and said with a smile, you and I are from two different planes. Although the enmity between us runs deep, I'm adhering to the principle of doing things in a friendly manner. I won't deliberately make things difficult for you. If you want to leave safely, I'll take your head. As expected. 10 times more expensive than planes with no grudges. June Changxiao. Hong Yao's face was red as he said angrily, don't go too far. It was not hard to tell that he really wanted to be a coward, but he had asked for 10,000 spirit stones. He did not give him a chance at all. June Changxiao said indifferently, you must have brought experts. 10,000 spirit stones to buy their lives, I think it is very worth it. Hong Yao was silent. There were not many people from the Scarlet Sea continent, only 20 or 30, but they were all higher-ups of the Jade Sea Palace. If anything happened to them, it would really shake the sect's foundation. Originally, he wanted to bring more elite powerhouses and take advantage of the Falling Star continent's invasion by the Hell Spirits to fish in troubled waters. In the end, he did not fish and was blocked in the river with fishing nets. No. He had to be firm. He had to join forces with the other planes and fight to the death. June Patriarch. Suddenly, the powerhouse of the Lingyun continent standing at the side said, I am willing to pay. Pht. Hong Yao vomited blood. The Imperial Sword continent also compromised. One of the higher-ups shouted, we will pay too. Hong Yao clenched his fist and said with difficulty, here. A few planes with grudges chose to follow their hearts and gave out spirit stones that matched the number of heads. After some counting, there were a total of 1.5 million spirit stones of different names. As for those planes with no grudges, 1,000 spirit stones per head, they received more than 3 million spirit stones. It was not a lot. But Jun Changshao was already very satisfied. Because the strength of these plain spirit stones was at least twice as strong as the natural spirit stones of the falling star continent. The Demon Emperor's Sect's young master Yuan had once invited Lord Dog Leftover to work together and do something big in the falling star continent. However, Lord Dog Leftover was now bullying other planes, and he was still thinking of stirring up trouble while Lord Dog Leftover was unprepared. Sigh. They were not on the same level at all. If Jun Patriarch really cooperated with him, he would definitely lose his value. Everyone. Watching the cultivators of various planes leave after paying, Jun Changshao picked up the loudspeaker and said, "The Falling Star Continent sincerely welcomes you to come and watch the show again." Watch the show, my ass. Everyone cursed in their hearts. The punishment from the battlefield spirits ended. Li Tiangshan and the others returned to the sect of all times one after another due to the time limit of the Surge Talisman. They had benefited a lot from this practical experience. It was definitely a valuable experience that could not be bought with money. Patriarch Li Qingyang said, "The stronghold has expanded a lot. It's even closer to the city now." Looking at the stronghold that had only been a few feet away when they first entered and had now expanded to a large scale, a strong sense of accomplishment gradually bloomed in Go Sheng's heart. "Father, why are you here again?" Honglian. "Nothing, I just wanted to come and see you." "Father, is there something on your mind?" "Nothing." Mu Changhong wanted to make arrangements for his funeral many times, but when he saw his daughter's smiling face, he did not have the courage to say it. He was afraid that she would be sad for him. "Father," Mu Honglian said softly, "Patriarch brought us to train. There were many powerful ferocious beasts there, and we had a lot of fun fighting them. As a disciple of the sect of all times, there were some things that had to be kept secret." Thus, she did not say that they had gone to the planar battlefield and replaced the battlefield spirits with ferocious beasts. "Is that so?" Mu Changhong replied. He felt extremely bitter in his heart. No matter how strong they are, how can they be stronger than the planar battlefield where Emperor-class experts are everywhere? Chapter 968. Not only did the battlefield spirits not cause any damage to the Falling Star Continent stronghold, but they also gave him experience points, missions, and spirit stones. This was absolutely awesome. 2 experience talismans, but they're useless. Jun Changshao sat in the study and frowned. After the battlefield spirits were all wiped out, the side mission had been completed. Although the author had left it out, he was still rewarded with 20,000 contribution points and 2 experience talismans. The contribution points didn't matter. After all, there was a limit. However, the experience talismans alone didn't give him any substantial improvement. This made Go Sheng a little depressed. At this time, he would rather be rewarded with some powerful weapons, pills, talisman recipes, or some kind of mystic realm that could be used to level up. "It's good enough that you have them. You're really arrogant," the system complained. Jun Changshao couldn't be bothered with it. He crushed the 2 experience talismans one after another. As expected, although his strength had increased, it was still not obvious from the overall perspective. There were no sublevels for half-step Wusheng, so he couldn't be sure how long it would take for him to break through Wusheng. Ding! Side mission activated. At this moment, the system notification sounded again. Jun Changshao was surprised. Again? He opened it and took a look. The mission content was to kill 255 invading battlefield specters, elite mission. If he hadn't confirmed that the mission was completed and that he had received the reward, Jun Changshao would have suspected that there was a bug in the system and that the mission had been reissued. Patriarch Li Qingyang said telepathically, more battlefield spirits have appeared outside the stronghold. Jun Changshao hurriedly entered the Falling Star Continent stronghold and saw hundreds of battlefield spirits with the same strength and configuration outside. He was ecstatic. The experience talismans are here again. This time, the battlefield spirits didn't have a heavy voice in the sky, so many continents didn't know. Of course. Even if they knew, they wouldn't dare to come. Because, the ticket to watch the show cost 1,000 spirit stones. It was a little expensive. Call Li Tian and the others over, Jun Changshao said. Yes. Li Qingyang hurriedly left. Not long after, Li Tian, Mu Honglian, and the others once again entered the battlefield wearing the true Yang set and steel wings. Seeing the battlefield specters with the same configuration and strength, everyone's eyes lit up. Yesterday's battle had benefited them a lot. After they went back, they had a deeper understanding. Now that they had a group of people to fight with, if they practiced a few more times, they could easily enter the realm of Wu Huang. Jun Changshao said, "Go fight to your heart's content." Shwa! Shwa! All the disciples and higher-ups flew out, and another fierce battle began. There's no need to elaborate on the process. All in all, the disciples who had benefited from the battle yesterday, whether it was in terms of strength or actual combat, had greatly improved when they fought again today. Not to mention Li Tian and the others, even the Purple King and Li Qingyang would definitely gain experience points. Boom! Boom! Violent energy rippled across the Falling Star Continent. As the battlefield wraiths were killed one after another, the Starfall Continent stronghold continued to expand, and it was rushing toward the scale of a city. As for the Earth Spirit instrument in the altar, after the Sect of all times defeated all their opponents, the time limit was shortened from 125 days to 100 days. In the first battle, every battlefield specter that died would reduce the time limit by 1 day. Now that more than 200 battlefield specters had been killed, the time limit was only reduced by 25 days. It was obvious that some upper limit had been triggered. Although the speed of reduction was slower, the first batch of martial artists who entered the Falling Star Continent were even more tragic. Because 1 day less was equivalent to 1 day earlier. Ding! Side mission completed. 10,000 contribution points obtained. Ding! Sect contribution points, 3900070000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side mission. Mission reward, Experience Rune X1. Jun Changshao broke down. The mission is exactly the same. Why is the reward reduced by half? Maybe it's because it's repeated, the system explained. Although Jun Changshao was depressed, it was equivalent to giving it away for free, and it could also increase the experience points of his disciples. He would not mind even if it was repeated 10,000 times. The next day, the side mission appeared again. The battlefield specters came again. Looking at the same configuration and the same strength, Jun Changshao stood in front of the main hall and fell into deep thought. Is it because I'm too handsome? Did I move the upper realm and send experience bags every day for the disciples to increase their strength? The system was speechless. Jun Changshao lit a cigar and took a deep breath. Who leaked the news? The system was speechless. Since the experience bags were sent on time every day, he would definitely accept them. Therefore, in the next few days, Li Tian and the others crushed the surge rune to enter, then returned and sat in the spirit-gathering formation to comprehend. Of course. Although the side mission was triggered continuously, the rewards were decreasing. The third time was 5,000, the fourth time was 2,500, and the fifth time was 1,250. After that, only one experience rune was given. The sixth time, it was gone. Even if the battlefield specters appeared outside the stronghold as usual, the side mission was not triggered anymore. The disciples were fighting crazily outside the stronghold. Jun Changshao opened the system panel and saw that the original 19,000 contribution points had increased by 57,750 points. He immediately smiled. I can consider buying Xiao Ziji an exclusive divine weapon. He opened the divine weapon pavilion and searched carefully. Soon, Jun Changxiao's eyes locked on a weapon called Rui, Divine Dream. He was surprised. Spatula? He clicked on the introduction. Divine Weapon, Rui, Divine Dream Grade, Early Divine Rank Condition, user must be a disciple of the Lingyan Pavilion. Note, this item is only used for cooking and has no combat effect. Price, 10,000 contribution points. After seeing the note, Jun Changxiao was speechless. I didn't expect the Divine Weapon Pavilion to have a kitchen utensil level divine weapon. This is too careless. The system said, it's good enough that the host is not given a pot. Bullshit. Jun Changxiao pointed at the few rows below and roared, isn't this a pot? Damn. The system was instantly slapped in the face. There really is one. The pot's name was Cloud Boat, Heroic Secret. The condition was that the user must be a disciple of the Lingyan Pavilion. However, it was not used for cooking, but a defensive divine weapon. This girl is busy preparing meals for the sect's disciples every day. I'll buy her a spatula for cooking. Jun Changxiao decided. Ding! Host has spent 10,000 contribution points. Rui, Divine Dream X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 47750700000. The Rui, Divine Dream, was a few sizes larger than a normal spatula. It was suitable for stir-frying in a large wok, and it was dark gold in color. It looked very high-end and classy. Jun Changxiao looked at the divine weapons suitable for disciples of the Lingyan Pavilion. He found that there were no defensive divine weapons, so he locked his eyes on Cloud Boat, Heroic Secret. I'll buy this for sinful self. Ding! Host has spent 10,000 contribution points. Rui, Heroic Secret X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 37750700000. In a short period of time, Jun Gosheng had spent 20,000 contribution points. However, he didn't feel any heartache. After all, the side mission reward was given to him for free. Cloud Boat, Heroic Secret was an extra-large wok. Its color was similar to the Rui, dark gold in color. The word heroic was engraved on the bottom and back of the wok. Jun Gosheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This disciple of mine is going to become a scapegoat. The battlefield specters were once again wiped out. Li Tian and the others returned to the Sect of all times to absorb experience. Jun Changxiao gathered all the disciples at the main peak of the stronghold and announced, in view of sinful self's performance during this period of time, I will bestow upon him a divine weapon. Xiao Ziji was overjoyed. Yi Xingchen and He Wudi's eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. No hurry, no hurry. During this period of time, he had participated in the construction of the stronghold. The patriarch must have seen it all. When the time came, would he still be afraid of not giving him a divine weapon? Sinful self. Jun Changxiao said, step forward. Stomp. Xiao Ziji stepped forward. His body was straighter than the peak of the mountain. The patriarch had given second senior brother a divine weapon that could trigger a lightning tribulation. It was so strong that it made people dizzy. His divine weapon was definitely not weak. Swoosh! Jun Changxiao waved his hand, and Cloud Boat, Heroic Secret appeared out of thin air. After Xiao Ziji caught it and saw the appearance and form of the divine weapon, his expression suddenly became dull. In an instant, he finally understood why the patriarch had described it as a wok and not a sword. Li Qingyang and the others were also stunned. This is, after a short period of silence, everyone on the main peak shouted in unison, wok. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.